Chapter 2440. Zhao Fu looked at the various ministers and said seriously, "There's been a change in plans, and we need to discuss Qin's future." The various ministers nodded seriously. Now that a third card world was invading, the situation in the Heaven-Awakened world would become even more difficult, and Qin needed to make preparations for the future. After spending half a day, Zhao Fu and the various ministers discussed Qin's future plans. Now, the outer world, godly world, underworld, and golden world would slow down their battles and focus on stable development. Now that the Heaven-Awakened world was in such a dangerous period, almost no faction wanted to start a war. If they expended too much energy in a war, if a crisis occurred, they would not be able to defend, and they were worried about the future. The second was to strengthen the Qin Empire's defenses and have Qin's soldiers build all sorts of defensive structures. Now Zhao Fu had a bad feeling. Even though he did not know what would happen in the future, strengthening the Qin Empire's defenses would not be a bad idea. The second was to increase the strength of the soldiers. Even though Qin had tens of billions of soldiers, there were only 17 billion or so Stage 2 soldiers and a few 100 million Stage 3 soldiers, while the rest were only Stage 1 soldiers. Their military strength was not even as strong as an inner region royal kingdom, and now that the Heaven-Awakened world was in such a dangerous period, their military strength felt quite weak. After discussing these matters, Zhao Fu had his subordinates carry them out. He planned to head to the card world to gather information while he gathered his army. The card world was a new Great Thousand world, and they did not have any information about it. If they wanted to fight with it, they had to gather information first, just like when the Golden World had invaded. Moreover, they had to fight in the card world. This was a requirement of the Heaven-Awakened world, and Zhao Fu could not avoid it. This time, Zhao Fu went by himself and did not bring anyone else, nor did he make any preparations. After all, Zhao Fu was going to the spirit domain anyway, so he had already prepared everything. Following this, Zhao Fu went to the battle gate. There were 2 platforms here, 2 battle gates. One led to the Golden World and the other to the Card World. Zhao Fu was curious about this Card World. What kind of world would it be? Why did it become a card world? With this in mind, Zhao Fu entered the war gate and felt as if he was being pulled by a massive force. His body swayed and Zhao Fu arrived in the card world. Zhao Fu looked around and found that he was in a clearing in the forest. There were dense trees all around him and weeds that were more than a meter tall. It looked like a normal world. It was not like the chaotic world, where plants were very colorful and insects and beasts could be found anywhere. It was also not like the alchemy world, where everything was half metal and half life. Suddenly, Zhao Fu looked up and found that the sun in the sky was a bit special. It was not the same as an ordinary sun. The sun in the sky gave off intense light that shone in all directions. There seemed to be a gigantic golden book in the center, and there were a few light wheels around the sun. Those light wheels were also golden. Seeing this scene, Zhao Fu felt a little suspicious. What kind of sun is this? It was his first time in this world, so Zhao Fu naturally did not know much about it. As such, he did not pay much attention to it and flew to the side. The best way to obtain information was to find someone from the card world. If he asked that person, he would be able to get some general information about the card world. If there was anything that he did not understand, he would be able to get an answer. After flying for a while, a 10-meter-long strange bird with red scales and a crown on its head gave off a ferocious aura as it rushed at Zhao Fu. The strange bird was not very strong, only around stage 4. Seeing it rush at him as if it was seeking death, Zhao Fu gave a cold smile and grabbed out with his hand. A formless energy flowed out, forming a massive hand that grabbed the strange bird's throat. The strange bird struggled in terror, but Zhao Fu did not show any mercy. He twisted his hand and with a crack, the strange bird's neck was broken by Zhao Fu. Suddenly, the strange bird gave off motes of light, and 3 cards that were slightly bigger than poker cards floated out of the motes of light and floated in the air. One of the cards had a picture of a bird-shaped flame on the front, and there were words below it. There was also a magic formation on the back, giving off a formless aura. One of the cards had a few balls of blood and flesh on the front, and there were some words below it. There was also a magic formation on the back. One of the cards had a red-scaled skin on the front, and there were also some words below it. There was also a magic formation on the back. Apart from the drawing on the front and the words written on the back, the 3 cards were almost exactly the same. There was no difference at all. Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and grabbed the 3 cards, and 3 lines of information entered his mind. Vermilion Bird Remnant Soul, Rarity, 4-star type, material card, effect, can be used to create equipment. Vermilion Bird Meat, Rarity, 4-star type, food card, effect, can be used to create food. Vermilion Bird Skin, Rarity, 4-star type, material card, effect, can be used to create equipment. The creatures here would drop cards after being killed? Was that why this place was called the Card World? Zhao Fu felt quite unsure, and he looked at a herd of single-horned cows on the ground and flew over. A few pained cries sounded out as the herd of cows was completely killed. There were 13 of them in total, and after they died, they turned into motes of light and disappeared, and cards appeared within them. There were 20 or so cards, and they were split into 2 types. One had a picture of blood and flesh on it, and it was a food card called Unicorn Cowhorn. The other had a picture of a horn on it, and it was a material card called Unicorn Cowhorn. Zhao Fu was now sure that after killing creatures here, their corpses would disappear, but they would drop cards. This was why it was called the Card World, and Zhao Fu now understood. This world was quite interesting, and even though he had only obtained a bit of information, it had piqued Zhao Fu's curiosity. Zhao Fu wanted to obtain more information, so he continued to fly. A few hours later, he had wanted to find someone from the Card World to obtain information, but after searching for a while, he did not find anyone. At that moment, Zhao Fu felt quite tired, so he flew to a lake and prepared to rest for a while. Sitting beside a large tree, Zhao Fu took out a celestial fruit that was the size of a fist and started to eat it. This celestial fruit was a stage 7 fruit, and it contained immense power and some celestial qi. It was something that Zhao Fu had obtained in the boundless void. Zhao Fu had many of these things, and eating them was quite beneficial to Zhao Fu. As Zhao Fu ate the celestial fruit, he took out the card that he had just obtained and looked at it closely. Even though he could obtain information from the card, it seemed that because Zhao Fu was from the outside world, this card could not be used. Zhao Fu. Chapter 2441. Suddenly, a little squirrel with snow-white fur and a tuft of azure fur ran over to Zhao Fu's side and squatted there, looking at the celestial fruit in Zhao Fu's hand with its bright eyes. Zhao Fu looked down at the little thing and smiled as he took out a celestial fruit and gave it to the little squirrel. The little squirrel hugged the celestial fruit and happily started to eat it. Zhao Fu found that the little squirrel did not seem to be an ordinary creature. Its strength was at stage 5, and its bloodline was most likely not low. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The sound of galloping horses could be heard as a group of cavalrymen rushed out from the forest and stopped in front of Zhao Fu. They looked like Westerners, and there were 13 of them in total. They were all women, and the leader was a beautiful woman with golden hair and silver eyes. She was dressed in azure armor and rode on a white horse. The other 12 women were tall and slim and had valiant looks. They were all quite good-looking and wore silver armor and held a spear. They also rode on white horses and gave off powerful auras. They all had Saint Realm cultivation. Seeing that he could not find them, Zhao Fu could not help but smile. Now, he could understand more about the Card World. "Who are you? Why aren't you kneeling after seeing our princess?" a female cavalryman asked with a cold expression. They were most likely speaking in the card world's language. Zhao Fu could not understand what they were saying, but he could understand what they were saying. Seeing the golden-haired woman, the little squirrel hugged the celestial fruit and ran towards her. It immediately jumped onto her shoulder and happily ate the celestial fruit. The golden-haired woman looked at the gluttonous little squirrel on her shoulder and smiled as she said in a pleasant voice, "Forget it. There's no need to bicker, let's go." Hearing this, the female cavalryman nodded and did not say anything else, and the group prepared to leave. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I don't think I told you to leave." Hearing this voice, the golden-haired woman stopped and turned to look at Zhao Fu. She frowned and looked somewhat displeased. At this moment, Zhao Fu had already used the language stone to translate his words into the language of the card world, so they could understand him. The female cavalryman said coldly, "You already know our princess' esteemed status, yet you still dare to speak to her in such a manner? Do you really think our princess is magnanimous and won't kill you?" Zhao Fu said with a contemptuous smile, "You can come and give it a try." The female cavalryman looked furious, and just as she was about to charge at Zhao Fu, the golden-haired woman stretched out a hand to stop her and said seriously, "He might be very powerful and not as ordinary as he looks." Hearing the golden-haired woman's words, the female cavalrymen were shocked, and their expressions became stern. The golden-haired woman looked at Zhao Fu with her beautiful eyes and asked seriously, "Just who are you?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "Come over and I'll tell you." The golden-haired woman was evidently not that stupid, but she was not sure how powerful Zhao Fu was. She was worried that Zhao Fu would be in danger, so she said coldly, "What do you want to do? This is Lock Kingdom's territory." Zhao Fu smiled as he walked over and said condescendingly, "What do you think I want to do?" Seeing Zhao Fu walk over, everyone instinctively felt a sense of danger. However, since he was walking over to the historical remnant, they could not just stand there and wait for Zhao Fu to hurt them. As such, they gave off powerful auras and raised their spears as they rushed at Zhao Fu, attacking Zhao Fu. Seeing them rush over, Zhao Fu's smile became even wider. He sent a wave of power into his left eye, causing the golden pupil in his left eye to start to spin. Clang, 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 the sounds of chains could be heard as black chains shot out from the ground, quickly shooting towards the women. The women felt quite startled and released energy barriers, wanting to block the countless chains. However, the chains contained terrifying power and easily pierced through the energy barriers, binding up the women and their horses. They vigorously struggled, but they could not break free at all. The little squirrel was also bound up by a chain and was wrapped up like a dumpling, crying out in fear. Now they all felt terror. The person in front of them was incredibly terrifying, and they were not a match for him at all. Zhao Fu looked at them being bound by the chains and smiled as he waved his hand, causing the chains to bind up their bodies and drag them in front of Zhao Fu, causing them to fall to the ground. The golden-haired woman's expression was quite unsightly as she looked at Zhao Fu with her beautiful eyes and warned, "You're very powerful, but don't think that the Kingdom of Rock is easy to bully. If you dare to harm me, the Kingdom of Rock will make you pay." However, Zhao Fu did not look afraid at all, and he smiled as he lifted the golden-haired woman's chin. The golden-haired woman turned her head in disgust and tried to break free from Zhao Fu's hand. However, Zhao Fu lowered his head and kissed the golden-haired woman's lips. Countless traces of Six Desires' demonic chi flowed into her mouth, and the golden-haired woman's willpower was quite resolute as she resisted Zhao Fu. The other female cavalrymen furiously cursed at Zhao Fu, "Bastard, scum, beast! Don't violate their princess. If you have any problems, come at them." Zhao Fu naturally did not have time to pay attention to them. He stretched his hand into the golden-haired woman's armor and started to do something indescribable. The golden-haired woman's willpower directly collapsed, and she intensely responded to Zhao Fu. Following this, the two of them started to intensely do it, and the female cavalrymen's faces became red. They had never thought that their princess would become so lewd. She was doing such a thing with a man in front of them and still looked so happy. Soon, the golden-haired woman collapsed into Zhao Fu's embrace, and the other female cavalrymen quickly experienced the pleasure of their princess. They all started to do something indescribable with Zhao Fu and let out different moans. The golden-haired woman quickly recovered her strength and rode on Zhao Fu's body. The female cavalrymen surrounded Zhao Fu, creating a shocking scene. These female cavalrymen were quite lewd, and they madly rode on Zhao Fu's body. However, they were not a match for Zhao Fu, and in the end, it was Zhao Fu who rode on them and enjoyed their taste. Half a day later, the sun was about to set. The golden sunlight fell on the surface of the lake, and the surface of the lake sparkled. The ground was covered with armor and clothes, and many women were leaning against Zhao Fu. Their faces were flushed, and they were powerless. Zhao Fu looked at the blonde woman in his arms and said with a smile, "I want to know everything about the card world. Tell me everything you know." The golden-haired woman immediately came to her senses and asked in shock, "You're from the Heaven-Awakened world?" Now that they knew that the planar war had started between the card world and Heaven-Awakened world, hearing that Zhao Fu wanted to ask about the card world, they understood that Zhao Fu was from the Heaven-Awakened world. After all, only people from the Heaven-Awakened world wanted to know about the card world. Chapter 2442. Zhao Fu smiled and nodded. "That's right, I'm someone from the Heaven-Awakened world. I came here to collect information about the card world. I didn't find many people, but 10 or so of you delivered yourselves to me." The golden-haired woman lightly harumphed. "When the planar war started, we came to check on the situation in our territory. We never thought that we would meet you, and now you violated us. Our bodies are no longer clean. What do you think you should do to us?" Lying on the other side of Zhao Fu was the female cavalryman who had spoken to Zhao Fu before. Her face was red as she said, "You don't have to worry about us, but you have to give our princess an explanation." Zhao Fu gave a domineering smile as he said, "Since I've taken you, you're all my women now." The golden-haired woman gave a trace of a happy smile. Women in the card world valued their chastity greatly, and if they did not even have their first time, it would be very difficult for them to get married. Now that she had been taken by Zhao Fu, she did not know why, but she wanted to stay with Zhao Fu. She had enjoyed the pleasure from just then, and it was as if there was a formless magic around Zhao Fu's body. The female cavalryman first smiled before saying worriedly, "But you're someone from the Heaven-Awakened world, and you and our princess are from different worlds. It'll be very difficult for you to be together." Zhao Fu said, "Since you're my women, you naturally belong to the Heaven-Awakened world. Moreover, my Qin state's army will soon invade, so I'm here to collect information." The golden-haired woman looked quite confused as she asked, "Your army? Just who are you?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I'm the ruler of a kingdom." The women all looked quite shocked. "What? You're the ruler of a kingdom? As a king, how dare you come here to collect information? Aren't you afraid of danger?" Zhao Fu smiled as he replied, "You don't have to worry about me." Thinking about how powerful Zhao Fu was, the women felt that there was nothing to worry about, but their expressions became quite unsightly. Qin State's army was right next to the Kingdom of Lok, and Qin State would definitely attack the Kingdom of Lok. The Kingdom of Lok was their family and friends, and it was something that they were extremely loyal to. The golden-haired woman looked quite worried as she said, "How are you going to deal with the Kingdom of Lok? I don't want you to start a war with the Kingdom of Lok." Zhao Fu thought for a moment before replying, "Do you think it's possible for people from two different worlds to get along with each other during a time of war? Qin State will not worry about Qin. Even if we can get along well, your Rock Nation will be regarded as traitors." Hearing this, the women fell into silence, unsure of what to do next. The golden-haired woman looked at Qin State and said, "Qin State, and Qin State, and Kingdom State as Qin States Fus. The golden-haired woman rolled her eyes at Zhao Fu. Is Great Qin really that powerful? This is the card world, and it's impossible for you to take over such a large area. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "All right, it's time to tell me about the card world. As for whether I can do it or not, you'll find out in the future." The golden-haired woman nodded and started to tell Zhao Fu about the card world. The first was their names. The golden-haired woman was called Hillary, and the female cavalrymen who had spoken to Zhao Fu were Melissa, Annie, Meredith, Alice, Aviva, and Christina. Next was the Kingdom of Locke, which was a marquisate state. It was only 10% the size of a world, and compared to ordinary factions, it was quite powerful. However, to Qin's state it was quite weak. This was no longer the outer domain but the central domain of the card world. Now that Qin's state had risen to a royal kingdom, it had been sent to the central domain of the card world by the war gate. This was not surprising, as most of its soldiers were Stage 2 soldiers, and Qin's state was at a slight disadvantage. Finally, there was the card world as a whole. The card world was a world with kingdoms, but it was different from the Heaven Awakened world. The card world implemented a system of enfeoffment. A king could enfeoff his territory to several great lords, and the great lords could enfeoff their territory to the lesser lords. The lesser lords could also give their land to the knight. This was like a pyramid, with the king at the top, followed by the great lords, the lesser lords, and finally the knight. In the card world, knights were the lowest lords, but they were still lords, and their statuses were much more prestigious than knights in other worlds. However, becoming a knight was not so easy. It required a long period of training, and ordinary people could not become knight. Only those who were more powerful and outstanding than ordinary people could become knight. Finally, if one wanted to become a knight, one had to be acknowledged by the Knight Association to become a true knight. Becoming a knight did not mean that one would have everything. It was still about honor and status. If one wanted to obtain territory and wealth, one also had to choose a lord to be loyal to. If one performed well, the lord would definitely give their territory to the knight. This was the tradition of the card world, and it had its own rules. Almost all kingdoms were like this, and there were very few exceptions. A king had the highest authority, and all lords had to pay taxes and give resources to him. He also had the power to gather lords to do battle, and he could revoke any lord's position within his territory. It was not just the king. Other great lords and lesser lords also had the power to revoke the positions of the lords under them. Many factions that had their lords removed would be cursed, and their power and fate would be greatly reduced. What's more, this would last for a very long time. As such, under normal circumstances, no lord of a lower rank would dare to offend a lord of a higher rank, unless the lord of a higher rank had declined and the next lord was more powerful. Zhao Fu did not like this kind of enfeoffment system, as there were many drawbacks to dividing power step by step. One had to pay attention to the possibility of lords rebelling at any time. Qin implemented a centralized system, and he held all of the power in the kingdom in his hands. He did not have to worry about lords, as there would not be any other lords. It was not just lords. Zhao Fu did not make anyone a king either. Even Bai Qi and Li Si, who were the people that Zhao Fu trusted the most, could give Qin City to manage. However, Zhao Fu would at most make them lords and would not make them kings. After all, if there were kings, a portion of fate would be lost, and the lord's power would be reduced. Everyone's loyalty would also be reduced, and there would be many other effects. In the future, even if Zhao Fu had children, he would only have one emperor, and no one else could be called a king. Chapter 2443. After understanding the system of the card world, Zhao Fu was very curious about matters related to the card world. Hilary explained to Zhao Fu seriously. In the card world, apart from the card race, anything could be turned into a card, such as trees, rocks, flowers, plants, beasts, water, even some intelligent races apart from the card race, such as giants, deer-horned people, blood warriors, python men, and half-lizard men could be turned into cards. Turning all sorts of objects into cards was a talent unique to the card race. Other races didn't have this ability. Turning things into cards also had a power limit. The stronger a person was, the stronger the card they could turn into. Very weak people could only turn into small stones or bugs. Also, turning inanimate objects into cards required less power than turning into living things. There were also 3 types of card turns. The first type was autonomous card turn. For example, beasts, races, and all creatures that could be turned into cards had the ability to do so, which was to turn themselves into cards. In this case, most creatures would voluntarily pledge loyalty to someone and turn themselves into card. As long as one held a card, they could summon it at any time. For example, if a person took a giant card, they could unlock it anywhere, and a giant would appear there. Of course, unlocking the card would consume a lot of power, and weaklings wouldn't be able to summon creatures that were too powerful. The second type was the most commonly used card turn, which was to turn others into cards. The card race could turn everything in the world into cards. Not only flowers, plants, but also food, houses, and buildings could be turned into card. The last type was forced card turn. This situation mainly occurred when something was forcibly turned into a card. Although a card had the ability to turn everything in the world into cards, all sorts of things had the ability to turn themselves into cards and also had the ability to resist being turned into cards. If a person wanted to turn a beast into a card, if the beast wasn't willing, it would do its best to resist the card turn. That person had to be stronger than the beast in order to turn it into a card. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to turn it into a card. Moreover, this was a creature that was forcibly turned into a card. Even after being turned into a card, it would emit power to struggle. Once the power binding it disappeared, the creature would break out of the card and reappear. After some powerful creatures or things were turned into cards, their enormous power could even seep out of the card and cause great consequences. Hilary said that there was once a family that turned an extremely terrifying demon into a card, but the demon that turned into a card emitted an extremely evil power that corroded the people of that family. In the end, that family turned into a half-human, half-demon monster. In such a situation, there would be things specifically sealed, suppressed, and imprisoned to prevent such a thing from happening. After explaining the 3 types of card transformation, it was time for the most important thing in the card world, the card heart. The card core was usually a square, about the size of an egg. Its main purpose was to store cards. The card core was the most basic noble artifact. As long as it was integrated into one's body, one would be able to take out any card with just a thought. There was no need to search through it, and it was extremely fast. The lowest grade card core was the white card core, which could store a dozen cards at most. The highest grade card core was the rainbow card core, which could store an unlimited number of cards. Furthermore, the card core itself was very powerful. What surprised Zhao Fu was the various types of cards. Apart from material cards, food cards, creature cards, and item cards, there were also skill cards. There were 2 types of skill cards. The first type was a skill card that could be learned. For example, a fireball skill card that could be learned could be used to learn the fireball skill. The second type of skill card was to turn a skill that had been cast into a card. For example, if you released a fireball, you could turn the released fireball skill into a card, and you could release it again at any time. Even if you didn't know that skill, you could rely on that card to cast that skill many times. However, creating such a skill card wasn't an easy task. It required a lot of card-making skills, and there were specialized card apprentices in the card world. Finally, Zhao Fu was curious about the sun, which Hilary explained clearly. The current sun was called the card book. God Sunday legend had it that there was a card book there, which contained all the cards in the card world. There were all kinds of cards, and it itself had the great power to create a world. The card book God's Son was the most respected thing in the card world, and no one dared to offend or insult it. Many people had built many book temples to worship it. At night, the card book god sun would become the card book god moon, which meant that the sun and the moon were the same thing. It wasn't like other worlds where the sun was the sun and the moon was the moon. That was the general information about the card world, and it was impossible to explain all of it in detail. Zhao Fu gave a trace of a smile and said, "Give me some of your blood." Hilary asked in confusion, "What do you want my blood for?" Zhao Fu smiled and said, "You'll know soon." Hilary nodded and took out a small knife and cut her palm. Blood continuously flowed out of the wound, and under her control, it condensed into a small blood-red orb before handing it to Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu took the orb of blood and used the 8 forbidden blood technique to absorb it into his body. After the blood entered his body, it turned into countless thin blood-red lines that spread out, and a type of innate power spread throughout his body. Looking at the large tree in front of him, Zhao Fu grinned and stretched out a hand as he said, "Card form." A wave of energy flowed out from his hand and covered the large tree in front of him. The large tree gave off boundless light before quickly becoming smaller and smaller. The light continuously condensed and turned into a card that floated in the air. The women all looked quite shocked. They had never thought that someone from the Heaven Awakened world like Zhao Fu would have the ability to turn cards into cards. Hilary said, "How can you turn cards into cards?" Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "Right now, I'm only using a forbidden technique that relies on your blood to temporarily obtain the ability to turn into cards. After a while, this ability will disappear." By now, Hilary understood why Zhao Fu had asked for her blood, and she hugged Zhao Fu as she asked, "What do you plan to do now?" Zhao Fu started to think. Now that he had obtained some information about the card world, apart from the special ability to turn cards into cards, its strength was about the same as the Heaven Awakened worlds, and it was not as dangerous as the Alchemy world. The Alchemy world's Saint Beasts were too terrifying, and there were all sorts of alchemy techniques suppressing the Heaven Awakened world, making it quite disadvantageous for the Heaven Awakened world. Of the Outer World, Alchemy World, and Card World, the Alchemy World was the most dangerous. It was impossible to determine which world was the weakest, as they had not fought with the Card World yet. Chapter 2444. After thinking about it, Zhao Fu smiled. "After that, my army will enter the Card World and build a defensive base." Hilary asked worriedly, "What about the Kingdom of Rock?" Zhao Fu looked at him and smiled as he said, "Tell me about the Locked Kingdom situation." Hilary nodded and began to tell Zhao Fu about the Kingdom of Rock. The King of Rock Country was getting old and wanted to abdicate. Now there were 3 successors. The first was Hilary's eldest brother, who was the strongest and very ambitious. The second was Hilary's second brother, who was ranked second in terms of strength. He was very vicious, and ordinary people did not dare to offend him, or else they would die miserably. The third was Hilary's third brother. He was the weakest, but he was a good person and was gentle to others. However, others thought that it was unlikely for him to become king, so there were very few people who supported him. Although Hilary was the most distinguished princess of Rock Country and was loved by many people, she did not have the right to inherit and could not become a king. Originally, Hilary was going to be a tool for the alliance between the Rock Nation and the Thunder Nation. She was going to marry the future crown prince of the Thunder Nation. Because of this, Hilary was angry, so she came to this remote place. Finally, something like this happened. Zhao Fu hugged Hilary and smiled as he said, "Do you want to be the king of Rock Country? I can help you become the king of Rock Country." Hilary said with a happy smile, "Actually, I don't have much interest in being a king, but I don't want to marry the prince of the Thunder Kingdom." Zhao Fu chuckled and said, "Are you willing to marry me?" Hilary snorted. "I don't want to either. You haven't even pursued me properly. It would be too easy for you to marry me like this." Zhao Fu said with a smile, "But you're already my woman. There's nothing I can do if you don't want to. Hilary rolled her eyes at Zhao Fu. You're shameless and overbearing. Melissa, the female cavalryman who had spoken to Zhao Fu before, lay on Zhao Fu's other side as she said in a serious tone, Your Highness, I think you are the most suitable person to be the king of Lock Country. In the future, under your leadership, Lock Country will definitely move towards glory. The other female cavalryman also said earnestly, Your Highness, we all believe that as a king, you can lead Lock to glory. Hearing this, Hilary hesitated. Melissa continued to persuade, Qin is a kingdom-level power, and Rock Country is definitely unable to resist. Princess, you are now the woman of King Qin. If you become a kingdom, Qin will not harm Rock Country, but will instead help Rock Country. I hope you can think for the whole of Rock Country, think for your father, and think for your relatives. You are the most suitable person to be king now. Zhao Fu smiled and said, That's right. I think that you are also the most suitable person to become the king of Rock. If you control the kingdom of Rock, I will trust the kingdom of Rock even more and will definitely provide you with various benefits. Hilary thought for a while and nodded seriously. All right. Then I am willing to become King Lock. Happy smiles appeared on the faces of all of the female cavalrymen. Nothing could make them happier than seeing the man they were loyal to and trusted become a king with the greatest power and status. Zhao Fu laughed and said, Now get up and put on your clothes. Only then did the female cavalrymen react. They were all naked and lying on the ground surrounded by a man. This was different from the night spirit that they believed in. Their faces all turned red as they quickly got up and put on their clothes. Soon, they put on their clothes and armor, looking valiant and formidable. However, their faces were still flushed, and they looked quite seductive. By now, Zhao Fu had also put on his clothes and waved his hand to untie the horses. After the little squirrel was untied, it immediately leapt into Hilary's embrace. It had been extremely afraid just then. It was also very worried about its owner. Just then, that person had done something intense with its owner in front of it, and it wondered if its owner had been hurt. Hilary smiled as she stroked its little head. The little squirrel looked at its owner and saw that she did not want to be hurt. Instead, she looked very happy and was no longer worried. Seeing that Hilary was playing with the little squirrel, Zhao Fu said, Hilary, take me to the Lock Kingdom's palace. Hilary turned to look at Zhao Fu and asked, You're planning to do this? Do you already have a way for me to become king? Zhao Fu nodded and said, My idea is very simple, which is to control your imperial father and your 3 big brothers. That way, you'll naturally become king. Hilary said in surprise, It's that simple? Do you have that much power? My father already has divine realm cultivation, and my 3 big brothers have world realm cultivation. If I become king just like that, others will definitely not be convinced. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, I'm already at the Emperor Heaven Realm, and ordinary Emperor Heaven Realm experts are not a match for me. Only Void Realm experts can stop me. Moreover, I have something to control people, so you just have to trust me. As for others who are not convinced, after Qin's army enters the card world, I'll help you deal with that. If anyone is not convinced, just kill them. The women all looked shocked as they said, You're already an Emperor Heaven Realm expert? How do you have such great power? Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, My identity is not as simple as you think. You'll know after you join Qin's army. The women all looked curious and nodded, looking forward to knowing who Zhao Fu was. Following this, the women all got on their horses, and Zhao Fu sat on Hilary's horse and hugged her with both arms. Hilary leaned against Zhao Fu's chest, her face slightly red, and she gave a happy smile. The little squirrel in her arms looked at this scene in confusion. Why did these 2 people, who had been enemies before, suddenly seem like lovers? After walking for a while, Zhao Fu and his group came to a city. Because Hilary was a princess, Zhao Fu did not hug her and instead walked on the road. A man walking with them would attract too much attention, and this was not good. Zhao Fu was someone from the Heaven Awakened world, and if his identity was exposed, the plan might fail. Zhao Fu followed them all the way to the royal palace of Kilo. Seeing the angry princess return to the royal palace, the guards happily reported this to the king. After hearing about this, the king let out a sigh of relief. Since she was willing to come back, she most likely had changed her mind and was willing to marry the crown prince of the Thunder Kingdom. She would be the queen of the Thunder Kingdom in the future, which would bring many benefits to the Kilo Kingdom. Even if she died in the future, the alliance between the Kilo Kingdom and the Thunder Kingdom would not change. With the Thunder Kingdom's help, no one would dare to bully the Kilo Kingdom. Chapter 24:45. The king was a short and chubby elderly man, and he said, "Call the princess over. I have something to say to her." The guard obeyed and immediately went to inform Hilary. After hearing about this, Zhao Fu, who was hiding in the void, sent Hilary to see the old king. After coming to the palace hall, Hilary looked at her father and coldly bowed as she called out, "Royal father." Seeing Hilary's expression, the old king chuckled as he said, "What is it? Are you still angry at royal father?" Hilary nodded. The old king smiled as he explained, "You're the princess of Lock Kingdom, so you should know that Lock Kingdom's situation is not good. Now that the Heaven Awakened world and the Card world have started a planar war, the situation is even worse for Lock Kingdom. Lock Kingdom needs a powerful ally. The Thunder Kingdom is a bit more powerful than our Lock Kingdom, and the person you're going to marry is the future crown prince of the Thunder Kingdom. He's a very good person, and you'll be the princess of the Thunder Kingdom in the future." Hearing this, Hilary said angrily, "Royal father, I'd rather not have any riches than marry someone I don't know." The old king felt quite angry and thought that Hilary had thought things through, but he had never thought that she would still be like this. He said angrily, "I'm your royal father, so you have to marry whoever I tell you to. This is not just for you but also for Lock Kingdom." Looking at her angry father, Hilary felt quite wronged, and her eyes became moist. "Ha ha!" A chuckle rang out, and a man appeared in the hall like a ghost. An invisible barrier instantly spread out, enveloping the entire hall. The old king felt quite startled and asked, "Who are you?" Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "I'm your daughter's man and your son-in-law. I should call you father-in-law." The old king looked quite confused and looked at Hilary. Why had she brought back a man after going out for half a month? He asked, "What's going on?" Hilary looked at her father and said, "He's indeed my man, and I've decided to marry him and gave my body to him." "What?" Hearing this, the emperor, who had been quite angry, exploded out with a terrifying aura. Hilary looked at her father in fear and lowered her head, not daring to say anything. Zhao Fu went up and hugged Hilary without any fear as he said, "Leave the rest to me." Hilary's eyes were red as she said, "Then try not to harm my father." Zhao Fu smiled and nodded before walking towards the old king. Hilary looked at the man and said with a smile, "Hilary, Zhao Fu, and Hilary. Hilary, king man, Hilary, king, princess, king, son, king, Hilary, king, Li, Boom! Fu, king, the king and said the king, king, Fu, king and to Fu, said, Zhao Fu did not move, and as those people rushed up, countless pale white tendrils grew out of Zhao Fu's body and quickly shot towards the people around him. The old king felt quite startled and hurriedly retreated. He felt that he was not a match for Zhao Fu, and he needed to break through the barrier so that others could kill this man. Seeing that the king wanted to run, Zhao Fu gave a cold smile and the tendrils covered the other guards before stretching out a hand. That hand turned into countless tendrils that stretched out and covered the old king. The old king started to struggle in panic and gave off powerful power, but he was unable to break free. Massive amounts of evil demon energy continuously flowed into his body. Boom! An explosion sounded out as a massive wave of power exploded out of his body. It was the power of his nation armament. The nation armament gave off massive amounts of power, defending against the countless amounts of evil demon energy. It was quite effective, and was able to defend against a lot of evil demon energy. At that moment, Zhao Fu took out an orb of blood, which flew into the air and fused into the barrier. The barrier became blood red and gave off a formless energy. The orb of blood was Hillary's blood, and it was used to cut off the connection between the king and the nation armament. Only someone with a direct royal bloodline could do this. Without the nation armament's power to defend, the massive amounts of evil demon energy flowed into the old king's body and took control. Zhao Fu put away the tendrils, and the guards and the old king expressionlessly stood there like puppets. Hillary looked at her father worriedly and said to Zhao Fu, "You really didn't harm my father, right?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "Don't worry, I'll definitely do what I promised you. Now that your father is under my control, I'll return him to normal." Following this, Zhao Fu released the power that had trapped the old king's consciousness, and the old king returned to normal. He looked at the man in front of him with an unsightly expression and asked, "Who are you?" Zhao Fu smiled as he explained, "I'm someone from the heaven-awakened world." Hearing this, the old king felt a chill in his heart. He had never thought that Zhao Fu was someone from the heaven-awakened world, and their worlds were currently at war. Zhao Fu continued to say, "Now that your daughter has become mine, if I want your daughter to become the king of Lok, it won't matter whether you agree or not. After all, I control your body and can do anything." The old king looked at Zhao Fu with an unsightly expression and said, "What's your goal?" "It's not just for my daughter to become the king of Lok." Zhao Fu smiled and nodded, "That's right. In the future, your Lok kingdom will belong to me, Qin." The old king was greatly shocked. Wasn't this tantamount to submitting to another world's faction? He could not accept this at all. At the same time, he felt incredibly furious and cursed at Hillary. "You unfilial daughter, you actually did such a thing. How did I give birth to a daughter like you?" Hillary felt incredibly guilty and started to sob. Zhao Fu controlled the old king again and turned to hug Hillary as he comforted her, saying, "This is the best way to deal with this. If Qin attacks, your Lok kingdom will suffer countless casualties." Hearing this, Hillary felt a bit better and hugged Zhao Fu as she asked, "What should we do next?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "You can leave for now. Just leave the rest to me." Hillary nodded her head and left. Zhao Fu then controlled the king and had the three princes come to the palace. They were able to easily control them, and he had begun to control the Lok kingdom. Peak. Chapter 2446. Now that Zhao Fu controlled the four most important people in Rock Country, the next step was to deal with the lords. Because it was a feudal system, it was unknown how many lords there were. The number of lords with titles numbered in the tens of thousands. Among these lords, there was no need to care about the lesser lords. What Zhao Fu cared about were the lords with heavy military power. Some of them supported the three princes, while others remained neutral and waited for things to change. Zhao Fu wondered if he could gather them together and control them all. This way, Zhao Fu could easily control Rock Country without using Qin's military power. This would reduce unnecessary casualties, and he could hide and continue to understand this card world. After making a decision, Zhao Fu controlled the old king to summon all the lords. However, the result surprised Zhao Fu. Many lords couldn't come to the kingdom because they had something to do. Zhao Fu wondered if something had been exposed. Zhao Fu remembered that the old king had said that Rock Country was in a bad situation. It should be because the royal family was weak and couldn't suppress these lords. That was why they didn't dare to come. If it was a normal country, the king would order many lords to come. Otherwise, they would be abolished. No lord dared to not come. This was the authority of the king. The old king originally wanted to marry his daughter to the Thunder Country and use the power of the Thunder Country to suppress and weaken the lords. However, Zhao Fu ruined his plan, which was why he was so angry. This was the disadvantage of the feudal system. Zhao Fu wondered why they didn't build a centralized country so that they didn't have to worry about the danger of the lord. However, why did most people choose the feudal system? Zhao Fu thought about it. This was related to the thinking of the people in the Cocker clan world. They had to get territory to be loyal to someone. It was also related to the rules of the Cocker clan world. Without controlling these greater rulers, Zhao Fu did not dare to proclaim Hilary as queen, or else these people might use this opportunity to rebel. Now, it was clear from their attitude. The king summoned them, but they didn't come. Did they think that the old king wouldn't dare to do anything to them because they had more people? This was indeed the case. If the king didn't dare to abolish a large number of nobles, these nobles would definitely refuse to accept it and rebel. If there were too many nobles, the kingdom would be in danger of being destroyed. Zhao Fu thought for a moment and decided to control the few lords who were willing to come. Then, he ordered his men to gather the kingdom's soldiers. The faces of the lords of Rock Country changed when they heard the news. They originally thought that the old king had suddenly summoned them because of a major change. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for the king to summon all the lords. But when they asked around, nothing had happened. What was the purpose of the king summoning them? Everyone was very suspicious, and after knowing that a few lords with large armies wouldn't go, they didn't go. Now that they heard that the king's army was gathering, they were even more surprised. The old king felt like he wanted to attack them. Naturally, they wouldn't just stand there and wait to be beaten. They quickly gathered their troops and prepared to defend against the kingdom's army. These were the thoughts of some of the greater lords. They had enough strength, so they were quite confident. However, some of the lesser lords were quite terrified because they did not have the strength to defend against the kingdom's army. The kingdom's army was a kingdom's most elite army, and it was much more powerful than their local armies. Seeing everyone's reactions, Zhao Fu gave a trace of a smile, and he planned to pick out some soldiers to act as guards. He didn't have any intention of attacking those lords. After all, they were much more powerful than the king's army, and they would be at a disadvantage. Since they didn't dare to come, Zhao Fu planned to go over. He would use touring the territory as an excuse, and only bring 3,000 soldiers as guards. They wouldn't be afraid anymore. After hearing this, the various lords let out a sigh of relief. They didn't want the Kingdom of Rock to fall into chaos, as it wouldn't be beneficial to them. Their combined strength was more powerful than the kingdom's army, but they were divided into different lords, and there were conflicts and grievances between them. If the Kingdom of Rock fell into chaos, they wouldn't be able to unite, and they would split. The surrounding kingdoms wouldn't give up on this opportunity, and they would definitely take this opportunity to devour the Kingdom of Rock. When that time came, they would have nothing. Zhao Fu first brought his people to the most powerful lord, the Pharaoh family. The Pharaoh family's ancestor was one of the founding fathers of the Kingdom of Rock, and had obtained a very large territory. After hundreds of years of development, they had become the most powerful lord in the Kingdom of Rock and the most threatening faction. The royal army gave off a powerful and dignified aura as they arrived at the Pharaoh family's territory. At that moment, the leader of the Pharaoh family was waiting in front of the castle with his people. His attitude was quite ordinary and didn't seem very respectful at all. It was as if he was waiting for the old king on equal footing. The leader was a dignified-looking middle-aged man. He stood there ramrod straight and looked quite ambitious. There were 3 beautiful women standing next to him. One was incredibly beautiful and had long, crimson hair. She wore a red dress, one had a mature figure and gave off a virtuous aura. She wore a dark blue dress, and one wore a white dress and gave off a gentle and quiet aura. There were also 5 or 6 young men and women standing next to them. The older ones seemed to be in their 20s, while the younger ones were only 3 or 4 years old. Most of the people around him were important members of the Philo family, as well as the guards. Zhao Fu and the old king sat within a luxurious carriage. The old king sat there like a puppet, not moving at all. Zhao Fu opened the curtains and looked at the people from the pharaoh family. The group slowly arrived at the castle, and Zhao Fu controlled the old king to get off the carriage while he acted like a guard and followed beside him. The leader of the pharaoh family gave a courteous smile as he said, "Your Majesty chose the pharaoh family because you trust us. I will take you around my territory and enjoy the scenery." The old king was currently under Zhao Fu's control, but his consciousness was still in his body. He knew what was going on outside, and he became quite angry. This was because the leader of the pharaoh family had not even bowed to him. Moreover, the kingdom of Rock most likely belonged to the royal family, while the pharaoh family treated the territory as their own and treated him as a guest. Zhao Fu ignored the old king's anger and controlled the old king to smile as he said, "This will be my last patrol, so I'll choose you, who I trust the most." The leader of the pharaoh family smiled as he said, "Your Majesty, I've already prepared a banquet to welcome you. Please come, Your Majesty." The old king nodded and walked into the castle. Zhao Fu followed behind him, giving off a very ordinary aura. No one paid any attention to Zhao Fu's existence, and Zhao Fu did not say anything either. After arriving at the castle's hall, there were many tables that were a few meters long, and there was a sumptuous feast on them. Chapter 2447. Zhao Fu controlled the elderly king to sit at the head of the table, while family leader Pharaoh sat next to him. Everyone else took their seats, and soon, the hall was filled with people. Everyone looked at the elderly king. The elderly king smiled as he raised his wine cup and said, "Come, let's drink together for Lock Kingdom." After saying this, he tilted his head back and downed the wine in his cup. Everyone else also raised their cups and downed the wine in their cup. Everyone else also raised their cups and downed the wine in their cup. The scene immediately became lively. A few people at the table were drinking and chatting. Some of them were eating meat with big mouthfuls. The elderly king also started to drink with the pharaoh family like his friends. It had been noon, but in the blink of an eye, the crystals in the hall lit up, and a white light illuminated the hall. By now, there were already people lying on the table, and the table was littered with leftovers, making it look quite messy. The elderly king's face was completely red, and he looked as if he was about to pass out. He smiled as he drank another cup with family leader Pharaoh before collapsing on the table and snoring away. Zhao Fu had the guards beside him help the elderly king away. Family leader Pharaoh was also a bit drunk. With the help of a few guards, he and his 3 wives returned to their rooms. Soon, a man and a woman entered as well. One of them was handsome and wore a black suit, while the other was beautiful and tall. They were both in their 20s, and they were the eldest son and daughter of the pharaoh family. Zhao Fu stealthily entered. Within the room, family leader Pharaoh sat on a chair and used his power to dissolve the wine he had drunk. The 3 beautiful women stood next to him. At that moment, the young man said, "Father, that elderly king is already drunk and dared to come to our territory with so few people. Why don't we imprison the elderly king in the pharaoh family and let us control Lock Kingdom?" The woman also said, "I agree with Big Brother's idea. The Lock family has controlled Lock Kingdom for hundreds of years, and Lock Kingdom is declining by the day. I think it's time for a change of leadership. Father is more suitable to be the king than that elderly king." After dispelling the alcohol, family leader Pharaoh returned to normal and said seriously, "Things aren't as simple as you think. Since he dared to come, he definitely made preparations. Moreover, he gathered the royal army before coming. Perhaps this is a trap." The woman in the red dress smiled as she said, "You two are still too young. This is an extremely important matter, so you can't afford to be careless. Otherwise, the entire pharaoh family could become a delicacy. The beautiful woman with the gentle and quiet temperament said, Also, this is the start of a war between the two planes. The situation is even more complicated. We have to be careful in all kinds of things. The old king has been on the throne for so long, he's definitely smarter than the two of you. I believe that this planar war is an opportunity for us, family head pharaoh. We can use other powers to weaken the kingdom's power. Also, at this time, the other kingdoms don't want to have too many wars. Don't worry, the two of you. One day, the fellow family will definitely take over the kingdom of Lok. When that happens, the kingdom of Lok will be renamed to the kingdom of Fellow. The handsome young man and beautiful woman nodded in understanding. They had thought too simply and hadn't thought as far as their parents. The beautiful middle-aged woman in a deep blue dress smiled as she said, All right. It's already very late now. Your father and I are going to rest. You should also rest early. The two of them nodded and prepared to leave. Zhao Fu lightly laughed and walked out from the void. He looked at the fellow family and smiled as he said, There's no need to leave. Seeing Zhao Fu suddenly appear, everyone felt quite shocked. They recognized that Zhao Fu was the old king's bodyguard, and the fellow family hurriedly said, Kill him, we can't let him leave this room, or else the fellow family will perish. The beautiful middle-aged woman immediately took out a card and threw it at Zhao Fu. The card turned into a ray of light as it shot towards Zhao Fu. A 2-meter-wide ring of light appeared around Zhao Fu, giving off a powerful sealing power that locked Zhao Fu's body in place. The beautiful middle-aged woman in a deep blue dress also threw out a card, which turned into countless motes of light and disappeared. Vines grew from the ground and bound Zhao Fu's body. Seeing this, everyone let out a sigh of relief. The red-haired woman smiled as she said, He's been bound by 2 cards. Even a normal divine realm cultivator wouldn't be able to break free, so we can relax. The fellow family's leader stood up and looked at Zhao Fu as he said coldly, Tell me why you're here, and I'll give you a quick death. Zhao Fu looked at the vines and the ring of light around him and said, Is this the card's power? It feels quite strong, and its casting speed is quite fast. A look of anger appeared on the fellow family's leader's face. Didn't you hear me talking to you? Zhao Fu raised his head and lightly laughed as he looked at the fellow family's leader. The handsome-looking young man next to him said coldly, Father, I think he needs to be taught a lesson before he'll listen. Leave the rest to me. I'll let him know what fear feels like. The fellow family's leader thought about it and said, All right, as long as you don't kill him, you can do whatever you want to him. It's very likely that he knows the old emperor's goal, so we have to investigate this thoroughly. Are you sure you've bound me? Zhao Fu's lips curved into a condescending smile as he looked at everyone. Hearing this, everyone felt quite startled and looked at Zhao Fu. Boom! An explosion sounded out as a massive wave of power exploded out from Zhao Fu's body. The vines binding Zhao Fu's body instantly shattered, and the ring of light around Zhao Fu's body directly collapsed. Everyone looked quite confused. They had never thought that this would happen. The fellow family's leader said in terror, How do you have such power? Zhao Fu smiled as he asked, What do you think? The fellow family's leader's face became pale as he yelled, Hurry and run. Notify the others, I'll stop him. The others did not hesitate and quickly ran in all directions. This was the only way to survive. A card flew to family leader Pharaoh's forehead and gave off boundless yellow light as a powerful wave of power entered family leader Pharaoh's body. Family leader Pharaoh's body erupted with yellow flames, giving off terrifying power as he rushed towards Zhao Fu. Clang, clang, clang. At that moment, Zhao Fu coldly laughed as chains shot out from the air towards the people around him incredibly quickly. Everyone tried to resist, but they were completely powerless against the countless chains, and they were all bound up. The fellow family's leader was bound by the chains, and no matter how much he struggled, he could not break free at all. The others were the same. They looked at Zhao Fu in terror, not knowing how Zhao Fu was going to deal with them. Chapter 2448. The fellow family's leader struggled a few more times, but it was useless. He gave up and said, "What benefits did the king give you? I can give you 10 times as much as you spare us. If you're willing to obey me, I'll give you everything you want." Zhao Fu looked at the 3 women and smiled as he asked, "Are your 3 wives willing as well?" The handsome young man furiously cursed, "You bastard! I want you to die a horrible death." A trace of anger appeared on the fellow family's leader's face as he said, "That won't do. If you want women, I can collect them for you." Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "I won't tease you anymore. That king is just a puppet that I control. Now the Lock Kingdom is mine and you can't give me that." Everyone looked incredibly shocked. This is too shocking. The Lock Kingdom's king has been silently controlled by someone. Now the Lock Kingdom is under a massive shadow, and no one has noticed this. The Lock Kingdom might perish because of this. The fellow family's leader looked terrified as he said, "Just who are you?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "There's no harm in telling you. After all, you won't be able to escape from me. I'm someone from the Heaven Awaken world." Everyone was once again shocked. The Heaven Awaken world was at war with them, so why would someone from the Heaven Awaken world infiltrate here? All of the king's strange actions from before were now explained. Boom! Zhao Fu stretched out a hand and a massive wave of demonic energy flowed out from his palm towards the fellow family's leader and the handsome young man, easily controlling their bodies. Zhao Fu looked at the remaining 4 women. The women understood what was going to happen, and they looked both furious and afraid. The red-haired woman thought for a moment before gritting her teeth and saying, "As long as we become your women, will you spare the fellow family?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, As long as you obediently obey me, I naturally won't harm the fellow family's people." The crimson-haired woman turned to look at the other 2 beautiful women and the arrogant woman as she said, "Right now, for our husband, for our children, for our loved ones, and for family leader fellow, we have no other choice." The others thought about it and nodded with a pained expression. Zhao Fu smiled and loosened the chains that bound them. He said in a commanding tone, "Come and serve me." The 4 women glared at Zhao Fu in shame and indignation, but when they thought about their families and loved ones, they still squatted under Zhao Fu and served Zhao Fu. Family leader Pharaoh and family leader Injun were about to explode with rage as they watched their own mother and wife serve a man right in front of them. They wanted nothing more than to chop Zhao Fu into minced meat so that Zhao Fu would die a horrible death. What enraged them even more was what happened next. Zhao Fu and the 4 other women were having an intense time on top of the Pharaoh family leader's bed. The 3 beautiful women and the arrogant woman became extremely lewd, and they began to moan in a humiliating manner. Their words were like sharp knives stabbing into the hearts of the Philo family leader and the handsome young man. They had never thought that their wife and mother would be so shameless. They were practically prostitutes who had completely betrayed them. However, they had never thought that the 4 of them, who had been so embarrassed and angry, would become like this. The 3 beautiful women and their daughter had never thought that they would be so happy. They had already forgotten everything else and were completely immersed in it. This continued until midnight, and the Philo family leader and the handsome young man felt as if their hearts were bleeding. Their wife and mother had been violated right in front of them, and it had gone on for so long. However, their bodies were bound and could not move at all. Even if they wanted to curse, they could not make a sound. After putting on the clothes, Zhao Fu hugged the 4 women. He now knew their names: Iwini, Frances, Josie, and Judy. Iwini was the beautiful woman with crimson hair. Iwini was the crimson-haired beauty, and her face was quite red as she lay in Zhao Fu's embrace. She placed the Flo family's leader to the side and asked, "What's your next goal?" Zhao Fu played with the thing in front of her chest as he smiled and said, After taking control of the Philo family leader, I'll subdue the other families and completely control the kingdom of Locke. My army will use the kingdom of Locke as a base to attack the surrounding kingdoms." Frances was the gentle-looking woman, and she said in surprise, "You're the ruler of a kingdom? You sound like you're quite powerful, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to have such terrifying power." Zhao Fu lightly smiled and nodded. Josie was the gentle-looking woman, and she shyly asked, "Are you satisfied with our bodies? We can all serve you in the future, but you can't harm the Philo family or our loved ones." Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I'm very satisfied. I like people like you. As long as you're obedient, I won't harm the Philo family." Judy was Josie's daughter, the arrogant woman. She said with a red face, "Now that you've taken my body, can you be my man?" Zhao Fu said, "Now that you're all my women, call me husband." Judy happily called out, "Husband." With such a powerful person and the ruler of a terrifying faction, as a man, Judy naturally felt quite happy. The three beautiful women's faces became red and they also called out. This caused the Philo family's leader to explode in anger. Not only was his wife doing it with another man in front of him, but she was also affectionately calling him husband. If it wasn't for the fact that his power was restricting his body, he would have coughed up a mouthful of blood. Were the three of them still his beloved wives? How had things become like this? Before he could think for too long, his wives' lewd voices once again sounded out from the bed. They once again started to do indescribable things with that bastard. The next morning, the sun rose over the horizon, and sunlight illuminated the land. Zhao Fu stretched and got off the bed. He looked at the four women sleeping soundly and did not disturb them. He opened the door and walked out. When the female attendants saw Zhao Fu walk out of the family's leader's room, they looked quite confused. However, they did not think too much about it. After all, the family's leader and young master were also inside, and it was most likely that the family's leader had something to discuss with him. However, none of them would have thought that the family's leader and young master would be lying on the ground, and their wives and young mistress would be lying on the bed. Their clothes were scattered all over the ground. After Zhao Fu finished his breakfast, everyone in the room returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Zhao Fu had used his power to control the Philo family's leader and the handsome young man. If he did not use his power to control them, they might go crazy and try to kill Zhao Fu. Following this, Zhao Fu gave the three beautiful women some instructions before taking his people and leaving the Philo family's territory, heading to the next family's territory. Peak. Chapter 2449. 2 days later, Zhao Fu had subdued two of the biggest lords and was about to head to the next one. At this time, news came from the royal palace, saying that the Thunder Nation had sent an envoy, asking when the princess would be married off. Hearing this, Zhao Fu lightly laughed and had no intention of going back. He had someone reply, "The princess is not getting married, the marriage is cancelled." Now that Hilary was Zhao Fu's woman, how could he let her marry someone else? Moreover, Hilary didn't want to marry him. Of course, the order was given by Zhao Fu, who was controlling the old king. After the guard received the order, he quickly returned and passed on the message to the messenger of the Thunder Nation. When the messenger of Thunder Nation heard that Locke Nation broke the engagement, he went back with an ugly expression. After hearing about this, the Thunder Kingdom's royal family flew into a rage. This was because the two kingdoms had already discussed the marriage, and they were prepared to marry the princess of Locke Kingdom. However, now that they had broken the agreement, the Thunder Kingdom had lost a lot of face. Moreover, they had wanted to use the Princess of Rock Country to intervene in Rock Country, but now their plan could be said to have failed completely. The king of the Thunder Kingdom was a middle-aged man with a coarse beard. He sat on the throne and said angrily, "Since the Rock Kingdom dares to break the promise, we'll teach them a lesson." The ministers didn't have any objections and supported the Thunder Kingdom's decision. This time, no matter what, They had to cede a portion of Bylok Kingdom's territory. The Thunder Nation immediately gathered their troops and declared war on the Lock Nation. After hearing about this, the lords of Lock Country started to panic. The Thunder Country was much more powerful than their Lock Country, and Lock Country was already in a bad situation. If they fought, Lock Country would most likely lose. If the Kingdom of Rock lost, they could only admit defeat and cede a large amount of territory and wealth. Their interests would be greatly affected. If Rock Country was destroyed, then the lords would have nothing. The lords hurriedly rushed to the palace. After hearing about this, Zhao Fu was quite surprised. He had never thought that the Thunder Kingdom would suddenly attack the Rock Kingdom, so he immediately returned to the palace. Zhao Fu controlled the old king to sit on the throne while Zhao Fu stood beside him. Below him stood the various lords. Before, they hadn't been willing to come, but now that something big had happened, they all ran over. They spoke one after another. "Your Majesty, please take back your decision and marry the princess to the prince of the Thunder Nation. That way we can have peace and avoid war. Your Majesty, please think for the sake of the Rock Nation and your people. Marry the princess to the Thunder Nation. Rock Nation doesn't want war. Your Majesty, we were in the wrong this time. We shouldn't have broken off the engagement. It's understandable that the Thunder Nation is angry. We should take the princess and some treasures to ask for peace. I'm sure the Thunder Nation won't mind. King, this time you have to listen to us. Right now, Rock Nation is in a very bad situation. They can't defeat Thunder Nation. You can't let Rock Nation suffer because of your daughter. Yeah. You can't let the princess be so willful. As the princess of Rock Country, she should sacrifice herself for Rock Country. From now on, she will be the hero of Rock Country and will receive our respect. They are all right. Your Majesty, please make a decision quickly. Otherwise, it'll be too late for the Thunder Nation to attack. Hillary, who was clad in armor, looked at these lords angrily. These lords claimed that they were doing this for the Rock Nation, but they were mainly thinking about their own interests. If they all liked Rock Nation so much, then Rock Nation would not be like this. The king had given the order for them to come to the palace, but a large group of people had been unwilling. Now, they still had the face to force her to marry the Thunder Nation's prince. Hillary felt quite angry, but she did not say anything. She turned to look at the cloaked man. He would take care of this matter, and she trusted him. Seeing Hillary look at him, a trace of a smile appeared on Zhao Fu's face, and he looked down at the lords trying to persuade the old king as he said, "That's enough. All of you, stop." The lords looked quite displeased because even the king had not spoken to them like this, yet this guard dared to speak to him like this. An arrogant young man berated, "Who are you? Do you think this is a place for you to speak without any rules?" Zhao Fu looked at this young man and did not seem angry at all. He smiled as he said, "Since you love Rock Nation so much, now is the time for you to make contributions. I don't need to find you all." Hearing this, everyone felt quite confused and did not understand what Zhao Fu meant. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as a massive evil and dark aura flooded out like a tidal wave, inundating the lords. The lords felt quite startled and their bodies felt cold, as well as a wave of terror. Swish, 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 countless pale white roots grew out of Zhao Fu's body, giving off an evil power as they rapidly stretched towards the lords. The lords looked terrified and wanted to run, but facing the pale white roots, they were unable to resist at all. They were all wrapped up by the pale white roots, and massive amounts of demonic power flowed into them. The lords were quickly controlled by Zhao Fu without much resistance, as Zhao Fu was far more powerful than them. Following this, Zhao Fu withdrew the pale white roots, and the lords stood there like puppets. Zhao Fu gave a trace of a smile as he said, "Go back and gather all of your forces." The lords obeyed and turned to leave. Hillary looked at the man in front of her in shock. Ordinary people would not be able to take control of Rock Nation so easily. What should we do now? Hilary smiled as she looked at Zhao Fu and asked. Zhao Fu went up and hugged her as he said, "Gather all of our forces to fight against Thunder Nation. I want to see how your card world fights." Hilary's face became red. This was the first time she had been hugged by a man in front of so many people. Now that Zhao Fu had taken control of Rock Nation, she did not resist and leaned into Zhao Fu's embrace. But Thunder Nation has a great advantage, and Rock Nation will most likely lose. Zhao Fu smiled confidently as he said, "With me here, Rock Nation won't lose." Hilary trusted Zhao Fu and smiled as she nodded. Following this, all of Rock Nation's forces gathered on the city walls. There were 500 million Stage 2 soldiers in total, while Thunder Nation sent out 800 million Stage 2 soldiers to attack. They had 300 million more soldiers than Rock Nation. Most importantly, their morale and strength were slightly higher than Rock Nation's. If they really fought, Rock Nation would not have an advantage and would most likely lose. Zhao Fu stood on the city walls and hugged Hilary as he looked at Thunder Nation's army, looking incredibly confident. Peak. Chapter 2450. The people from the Thunder Kingdom looked quite confused. They had thought that they would see the King of Lok, but they had never thought that it would be a man wearing a cloak. Moreover, he was hugging Hela, who should have been married to the Thunder Kingdom's princess. This was a public humiliation to the Thunder Kingdom. The Thunder Kingdom's crown prince was a well-built young man. Seeing his woman being hugged by another man, he looked quite furious and said, "Royal father, this time we'll make the Lok Kingdom pay a heavy price." The Thunder Kingdom's king looked quite furious and nodded before looking at Zhao Fu and asking, "Who are you?" Zhao Fu replied, "I'm the king of the Lok Kingdom and the princess man." The people from the Thunder Kingdom looked quite confused. How could such a large kingdom like the Lok Kingdom suddenly have a new king? It seemed that it was this person's decision to break off the engagement. The Thunder Kingdom's king said coldly, "Since you've made such a decision, you should know the consequences." Zhao Fu lightly laughed, "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The Thunder Kingdom's king felt quite furious. There was nothing else he could say. He had to use force to subdue this person. As such, the Thunder Kingdom's king gave the order to attack. Boom! Countless soldiers wearing violet armor gave off a massive aura as they flooded towards the city walls, their aura shaking the surroundings. Because Zhao Fu did not understand how to fight in the card world, he gave the command to Hela, who was also a general. Hela stood in front of the city walls and ordered the archers to prepare. The archers drew their bows and aimed at the Thunder Kingdom soldiers. Swish, 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 the sound of the air being torn could be heard as arrows containing immense force shot out, drawing arcs in the air and shooting towards the Thunder Kingdom's soldiers like raindrops. The Thunder Kingdom's soldiers at the front released cards from their bodies and floated in front of them, giving off boundless light and forming massive rectangular shields of light. Bang! 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 One arrow after another slammed into the shield of light, causing a series of sounds to ring out. The shield of light blocked almost all of the arrows, and only a few cracks appeared on it. The Thunder Nation's army continued to charge towards the city walls. Some of the people in the middle took out cards, which turned into countless motes of light that covered the soldiers. The soldiers' bodies actually flew up and quickly flew towards the city walls. On the Lok Kingdom's side, they also took out cards and threw them forwards. The cards turned into streams of water that contained immense power as they rushed towards the Thunder Kingdom's side. The massive impact of the water not only sent some of the soldiers flying back, but it also shattered some of the light shields and sent the soldiers flying back, coughing up a large mouthful of blood. Lei Mingwa took out many cards and tossed them forward. One by one, the cards turned into bolts of lightning that flashed through the air and flew forward. On the Country of Rock's side, cards flew out one after another, giving off countless rays of watery light that spread out in all directions, forming a huge watery barrier that covered the defensive wall. Crackle, bolts of lightning smashed against the defensive barrier, causing sparks to fly everywhere and massive sounds could be heard. However, the defensive barrier was able to block all of the lightning. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as a group of 1,000,000 cavalrymen wearing violet armor and riding large horses rushed out from the side, giving off a massive aura as they quickly rushed towards the city walls. Cavalry Corps. Zhao Fu's gaze was focused on an army. He had heard from Hilary that the power of cavalry corps in the card world was incredibly terrifying and was not something that ordinary soldiers could compare to. It was said that knights could obtain territory and become a lord, and knights were a symbol of honor and status in the card world. Cavalry corps was made up of knights, and each of them had extraordinary power. The card world's laws also gave them some region power, and their equipment and horses were all developed and nurtured by the kingdom. Each piece of equipment was incredibly valuable. Cavalry corps formed like this naturally had terrifying power, and they were the most powerful type of army in the card world. They were usually controlled by kingdoms, as this could affect the direction of a kingdom. The cavalrymen quickly rushed towards the city wall, their bodies giving off countless violet arcs of lightning. Each of the violet arcs of lightning gave off terrifying power, and the arcs of lightning linked together to form massive arcs of lightning. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Purple lightning covered the surroundings, causing the soldiers' hairs to stand on end. The ground gave off many arcs of lightning, and some places were charred black and cracked. That power seemed to be able to destroy the world. After the violet arcs of lightning formed, the cavalrymen's speed increased by 10 or so times. They were like massive bolts of lightning that struck the defensive barrier in an instant. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as countless violet arcs of lightning spread out. A shockwave spread out, causing the defensive barrier to instantly collapse. The city wall violently trembled, and that terrifying aura caused everyone's bodies to instinctively tremble. After the shockwaves dissipated, there was a massive dent in the city wall, and a massive hole had almost been smashed into the city wall. At that moment, the cavalrymen turned their horses around and ran back, preparing to once again charge. Zhao Fu looked at this scene in shock. This cavalry corps' power was indeed monstrous. Even the attacks of 100 million Stage 2 soldiers would not be able to break through the barrier, but it had been instantly shattered by a cavalry corps of 1,000,000 cavalrymen, and the city wall had almost collapsed. Hilary's face became pale, and she immediately ordered the archers to attack the returning cavalrymen. Swish, 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 the sound of the air being torn could be heard as arrows containing immense power and a massive aura shot towards the cavalry corps. Crackle, all of the cavalrymen gave off violet light, forming a formless electric field. As the arrows flew over, their bodies gave off arcs of lightning before shattering and falling to the ground. The Thunder Kingdom's people gave off a trace of a smile. This battle was quite beneficial to them. If the Lock Kingdom could still retaliate, that would be for the best. Otherwise, they might just destroy the Lock Kingdom. When that time came, they would properly humiliate that person and trample the entire Lock Kingdom beneath their feet, making them suffer the consequences of offending the Thunder Kingdom. The Thunder Nation's Crown Prince stared at Hilary. After defeating the Rock Nation, he would kill all the men of the Rock Nation's royal family and bring the women back to his palace. He definitely wouldn't let Hilary off. He would make her regret it. Swish, swish, swish. By now, the Thunder Kingdom's army had reached the city wall, and arrows containing immense force shot towards the city wall. The Lock Kingdom could only raise their shields to block the countless arrows. Peak. Chapter 2451. Cards appeared in front of Thunder Nation's soldiers, turning into motes of light that surrounded them. The soldiers quickly flew up the city walls and started to fight with Lock's soldiers. Apart from bringing out ladders to scale the city walls, the soldiers on the ground also used many card vines that were as thick as arms madly grew all the way to the top of the city walls, and the soldiers could use these vines to rush up the city walls. On the city walls, Locke's soldiers vigorously counterattacked. They took out cards, and countless traces of water vapor formed balls of water, shooting down Thunder Nation's soldiers. They shot out sharp arrows, piercing through Thunder Nation's soldiers, causing blood to fly everywhere and cries to continuously sound out. Thunder Nation's soldiers also ferociously attacked, and their soldiers continuously rushed up the city walls. Arrows pierced through Locke's soldiers' bodies, and arcs of lightning struck the city walls, electrocuting many Locke's soldiers. Both sides fought intensely, causing the scene to fall into chaos. Cries continuously sounded out as blood flew everywhere, and a terrifying aura shook the surroundings. Boom! A massive explosion once again sounded out as the cavalry corps once again gave off a terrifying aura as they rushed towards the city walls. Hilary turned to look at Zhao Fu. Now that the Crow Kingdom was in a disadvantageous situation, she could only see if Zhao Fu had the ability to turn the situation around. Facing her gaze, Zhao Fu gave a trace of a domineering smile and flew forwards, appearing in the air in front of the cavalrymen. Seeing Zhao Fu appear, the cavalry corps commander understood that he was most likely very powerful, or else he would not dare to block in front of them. The cavalry corps commander coldly roared and sent power into his spear. Countless arcs of lightning flew out. The other cavalrymen also sent power into their spears, causing countless arcs of lightning to appear as a powerful wave of lightning spread out. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as the cavalry corps commander vigorously stabbed towards Zhao Fu with his spear, causing a massive violet lightning bolt to fly towards Zhao Fu with terrifying power. It seemed to be able to shatter the heavens, and the violet light illuminated the surroundings. Zhao Fu stretched out a hand. An Emperor Heaven Realm power flowed out of his palm, forming a black semicircular barrier that gave off a powerful aura. Bang! A loud sound rang out as the purple lightning struck the barrier, causing it to shatter. The purple lightning turned into countless arcs of electricity and dissipated. The power that this cavalry corps released was much greater than that of ordinary Emperor Heaven Realm experts. Ordinary weaker Emperor Heaven Realm experts would not be able to stop this cavalry corps at all. As the strongest soldier type in the card world, it was truly terrifying. However, after meeting Zhao Fu today, the situation immediately changed. All of the cavalrymen were stunned. They had never thought that Zhao Fu would be able to block their attack so easily. This person's strength was terrifying. Boom! While they were still in a daze, Zhao Fu pushed out with one hand, and a massive force slammed into the cavalry corps, sending the 100,000 cavalrymen flying back and causing blood to leak out of their mouths. Zhao Fu did not want the Rock Kingdom to suffer too many casualties, so he did not waste any more time. He spread out his hands, and his eyes flashed with an evil blood-red light as he said in a cold and evil voice, "Now feel the fear." Boom! A deafening explosion rang out, and countless pale white roots grew out from the ground. They spread out in all directions and rapidly pierced into the ground, causing the ground to crack continuously. Countless roots continuously grew and covered the ground, and some attacked the Thunder Kingdom's soldiers in the surroundings. They wrapped around their bodies and devoured all of their power, and their bodies were absorbed by the roots like water. A boundless evil and dark aura flooded out like a heaven-toppling flood, and no one could stop it. Under this aura, countless people felt extreme terror. It was not just the Thunder Kingdom soldiers who stared at this scene in terror. The Rock Kingdom soldiers also looked terrified, and their bodies trembled. The countless roots continued to madly grow, and a massive branch grew out, giving off a shocking aura as it stretched towards the sky. A few sword-shaped leaves grew out, and it only stopped growing after reaching 10,000 meters. A massive black flower bud started to grow at the top and slowly blossomed. Boundless demonic light spread out, covering the heavens and earth. The sky darkened, as if all of the light had been devoured, becoming jet black. A massive blood-red star giving off a faint blood-red light and giving off world-suppressing power slowly appeared in the sky, giving off an enchanting aura. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as the blood-red star exploded out with countless traces of blood-red aura, which flowed towards the countless people on the ground. Traces of blood-red aura entered the Thunder Kingdom's soldiers' bodies. The Thunder Kingdom's soldiers felt a massive wave of dark and evil power enter them, and their bodies froze as their eyes danced with a blood-red light. The Thunder Kingdom's soldiers in the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers were controlled by Zhao Fu, and there were nearly 10 million of them. After being controlled by Zhao Fu, they were like puppets as they quickly rushed towards the Thunder Kingdom's soldiers. Arg! Pained cries continuously sounded out as blood flew everywhere. The Thunder Kingdom soldiers were killed one by one because the Thunder Kingdom soldiers under Zhao Fu's control were not only stronger than before, but they did not fear death at all. They did not have any emotions and only knew how to kill. What Zhao Fu had unleashed was the evil flower bewitching world. This was the first time that Zhao Fu had unleashed the evil flower bewitching world. Back in the Heaven Awakened world, he had been worried that his identity would be exposed, so he had not used it. Other worlds, such as the Outer World and Alchemy World, greatly countered the evil flower bewitching world, so Zhao Fu had not unleashed it. However, there were no restrictions in this card world. The nearby cavalrymen's bodies gave off formless electric fields, blocking the blood-red aura and preventing them from being controlled by the evil flower bewitching world. However, looking at the demon-like person in front of the evil flower bewitching world, they felt immense terror and did not dare to become enemies with Zhao Fu. Seeing this scene, the Thunder Kingdom's king's expression was quite unsightly and shocked. Seeing the Thunder Kingdom's soldiers continuously die, the Thunder Kingdom's king hurriedly gave the order to retreat. The Thunder Kingdom's soldiers also looked terrified as they quickly retreated. This was the first time they had felt such terror, and it was because of a single person. The Rock Kingdom's soldiers also looked incredibly shocked, and they inwardly rejoiced that they were this person's subordinates. This person was simply too terrifying, and he was not an existence that they could contend against. He could create a disaster by himself. Hilary was also incredibly shocked. Now that she had personally witnessed Zhao Fu's true power, no wonder he was so confident. She now felt immense admiration towards Zhao Fu. The Thunder Kingdom soldiers finally retreated, and Zhao Fu controlled them to chase after them for a while before stopping. Chapter 24:52. Zhao Fu put away the evil spirit Abyss Flower and the surroundings returned to normal. However, the Thunder Nation soldiers did not return to normal because the evil spirit Qi had already entered their minds and taken control of their bodies. However, because he lacked the evil spirit bewitching world's buffs, Zhao Fu could not control so many soldiers and could only affect them. Out of the 10 million Thunder Nation soldiers that had been controlled, only 3 million or so remained, and they stood there in a daze. Locke's countless soldiers could not help but cheer. They had won this battle and defeated the stronger Thunder Nation. They no longer had to worry about the Thunder Nation destroying Locke. Zhao Fu gave a trace of a smile and returned to the city walls as he said to Hilary, "How was it? I didn't lie to you. I said that with me here, Locke won't lose." Hilary smiled and nodded. "You're so powerful." Zhao Fu went up and hugged Hilary as he smiled and said, "Let's go back to the palace. Locke is now under my control, and we need to deal with the aftermath." Following this, Zhao Fu brought Hilary back to the palace. The various rulers' armies returned to their territories, but the other rulers also returned to the palace. Zhao Fu wanted to make Hilary the queen and have her control over Locke. Now that almost all of the rulers were under Zhao Fu's control, no one had any objections. As for the enfeoffment system, Zhao Fu could not solve it immediately because the enfeoffment system was deeply rooted in everyone's mind. Moreover, the card world had always been an enfeoffment system. Even though Zhao Fu controlled all of the rulers, If he abolished the enfeoffment system, the kingdom would fall into chaos, so he could not rush this matter. After the coronation ceremony, Hilary wore a golden crown and sat on the throne, giving off a kingly aura. The other rulers were still under her control and respectfully stood there. At the front stood 4 people: Hilary's father and 3 big brothers. Zhao Fu did as Hilary said and did not control the 4 of them for now. Now that they had regained control of their bodies, their faces were pale and unsightly as they furiously looked at Hilary. Hilary smiled as she said, "Father, big brothers, as my family, I will not harm you. Right now, you have no choice but to acknowledge me. Otherwise, you will always be in a state of being controlled." The old king looked at Zhao Fu and sighed. "Now that things have come to this, I recognize you as the king of Rock Country. I hope that you will lead Rock Country to prosperity." Rock Country was already under the control of Zhao Fu, and he himself was also under the control of Zhao Fu. Even if he objected, it would be useless. Moreover, with the help of Zhao Fu, they had defeated the powerful Thunder Country, and he knew how powerful Zhao Fu was. Perhaps submitting to Zhao Fu wasn't a bad thing. It might even make Rock Country stronger. As long as Rock Country became stronger, he could accept Rock Country submitting to someone else. After getting her father's approval, Hilary also revealed a happy smile. Her big brother's expression was cold and he did not say anything. It was evident that he was an extremely ambitious person and did not want to be an ordinary prince without any power. Her second big brother looked at Hilary hatefully and did not say anything. However, he already wanted to kill this little sister of his. No matter who tried to steal his things, they had to die. Her third big brother did not want to be the king and smiled as he said, "Fourth sister, second big brother believes that you will be a good king and will make Rock Country powerful." Hilary smiled as she said, "Thank you, third big brother." She then looked at her big brother and second big brother and said, "Big brother, second big brother, since you're not willing to acknowledge me, I can only deal with you accordingly. Don't blame me, and I won't let my husband control you. In the future, you will stay in the palace." The big brother and second big brother inwardly let out a sigh of relief, and did not dare to say anything else. If they angered Hilary and allowed Zhao Fu to control them, they would always be puppets, which would be worse than death. Moreover, as long as they could control their own bodies, they might have a chance in the future. Hilary looked at her father and third big brother and smiled as she said, "Father and third big brother, your statuses will still be the same as before. I won't mistreat you." The old king and third big brother smiled and nodded. News of Hilary becoming the new queen quickly spread to the surrounding kingdoms. Now they all knew that Rock Country had an incredibly terrifying person who could defeat an entire kingdom by himself. They all knew about the war between Thunder Kingdom and Rock Country. Thunder Kingdom had lost more than 100 million soldiers, which was a massive loss. They had 800 million soldiers in total, and the kingdom had entered a state of emergency to defend against Rock Country's attack. Now that Rock Country had received the help of such a terrifying person, they started to feel afraid. As such, they all wanted to maintain good relations with Rock Country and sent messengers to congratulate them. Rock Country's status in the surrounding kingdoms also rose, and it was an incredibly terrifying kingdom that could not be easily offended. Zhao Fu did not care about these things. Now that he had personally witnessed a war in the card world, he felt that he could not underestimate it. They could use all sorts of cards, and the cavalry corps' strength was quite terrifying. Just 1 million cavalry had such an effect. If it was 10 million or 100 million, Zhao Fu felt that he would not be able to defend against them. They could also be said to be terrifying killing machines on the battlefield. They were unscrupulous and unstoppable machines. If someone did not know better and fought with the cavalry corps in the card world, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. Moreover, the cavalry corps had stats that countered large creatures. When facing creatures that were hundreds or thousands of meters long, they would be able to suppress these large creatures, and they would also be able to deal great damage. A group of 10 or so cavalry could deal with a creature that was hundreds of meters long, and a group of 100 cavalry could kill a creature that was 1,000 meters long. A group of 1,000 cavalry could kill a creature that was 10,000 meters long. If they used the cavalry corps to deal with a group of beasts, they would have a greater chance of winning. In the past, all of the worlds had large creatures, such as the godly world, underworld, heaven-awakened world, and alchemy world. Because of their massive bodies, their defenses, life force, and strength were much greater than ordinary people's, and they could cause monstrous destruction. They could kill large numbers of enemies on the battlefield, and each of them was like a fortress. Every kingdom placed great importance on them, and if they had the ability, they would greatly nurture them. On all of the battlefields there were large creatures, and if there were no large creatures on the battlefield, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. The destructive power of a large group of large creatures could affect the entire battle and could even decide the outcome of a battle. Chapter 24:53. In fact, after the heaven-awakened world became a kingdom, it would gain the ability to nurture large creatures, and every kingdom would have large creatures. Qin also had many large creatures, such as giant wolves, giant spiders, wyverns, large devil beasts, large aquatic beasts. They were very useful on the battlefield, and they were a big advantage for Qin. However, once they participated in the card world's battles, this advantage could become a disadvantage. Cavalry corps could suppress these large creatures, and most cavalry corps would win unless they used numbers to suppress them. Now that the card world's advantage was revealed, it was not as simple as it seemed. In the future, when fighting against the card world, Zhao Fu had to be careful. They would not be easy to deal with. Locke also had its own cavalry corps, but because it was a defensive battle, the cavalry corps could not go out to fight by themselves. Zhao Fu decided to research the cavalry corps in the card world. If Qin had a cavalry corps like this, they would be able to suppress the large creatures of the various worlds. Following this, Zhao Fu went to the cavalry corps. "Greetings, sir." A group of 10 or so cavalrymen respectfully bowed to Zhao Fu. They had been on the city walls at that time and knew how terrifying Zhao Fu's power was. They also knew that Locke was now under his control, so they were very respectful and excited towards Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu smiled and nodded as he looked at them. They were all wearing blue armor and holding blue spears and blue swords at their waist. They also had 3 blue rings, a blue pendant, and a blue command medallion at their waist. These pieces of equipment were all water attributed, and they gave off treasure lights and powerful auras. They seemed to be made from top-quality water-attributed materials. Let alone cavalrymen, even ordinary people would have great power if they wore these pieces of equipment. The soldiers in front of him were not ordinary Stage 2 soldiers, but Stage 4 soldiers. Zhao Fu had people take out a set of cavalry equipment for him to study. He found that these pieces of equipment all had different attributes. What they were wearing was not ordinary equipment but a type of relic. Compared to equipment, relic had a certain spirituality and some special abilities, and not everyone could use them. They were all created using the card world's unique methods, and other worlds could not create such relic. Perhaps this was because of the card world's source power and laws. Every world had its own source power. The outer world had chaos power, the alchemy world had alchemy factions, and the heaven-awakened world had heaven-awakened spirit power. Now that Zhao Fu controlled Locke, he could study the forging methods. However, if he used the card world's materials to create equipment, he would not be able to use it. This was because the world origin energy laws conflicted with the world origin energy laws. It would take a lot of time to resolve the conflict. This relic looked at the relic. This set of treasures had many pieces, including armor, helmets, boots, gloves, weapons, rings, pendants, and tokens. They were all made of blue metal and had ripples carved on them. There was even a fish carved on the armor. The totem of crow was a spiritual fish. They all looked good and not ugly. They were all made of blue metal, and there were ripples engraved on them. There was also a fish engraved on the armor. The totem of lock was a spirit fish, and they all looked quite good. The power that a relic gave off was much more powerful than the individual relic, and it increased all of its power. They had special names. The weapons were called water spirit weapons, and they had powerful attack attribute. The armor was called water spirit tools, and they had powerful defense attribute. The 3 blue rings were water ring power, water ring speed, and water ring recovery. The first was to increase power, the second was to increase speed, and the third was to increase recovery speed. The pendant was a blue, heart-shaped crystal tied to a thin string. It was called the water pendant, and not only could it increase water-attributed power, but it also had a water-attributed protective power. If there was any danger, the pendant would release a wave of water attribute power to defend. The last piece was a command medallion. There were many ripples engraved on it, and the word lock was written on it. It was called Water Spirit Medallion. It allowed the rider's power and thoughts to be connected with the horse. Not only could the rider obtain the horse's power, but they could also obtain the horse's life force. When the rider's thoughts were connected, the rider would know what the horse was thinking, and the horse would know what the rider was thinking. Both parties could communicate well, and they could play a greater role. It also had a storage function. It could store the horse in the command medallion, and it could be released when needed. These were the attributes of the relic. The weapons increased attack power, the armor increased defense, and the accessories increased support attribute. Right now, this set of artifacts was only a mid-level artifact. This type of artifact was split into 6 types. The first type was low-level artifacts, which were usually made from low-level materials. They were usually used by weaker forces in the outer regions, and their power was the weakest. The second type was the medium relic, which was made with more precious medium relic. It was usually used by the middle regions, and some of the stronger factions in the outer regions had it too. It was stronger than the low relic. The third type was the high relic, which was made with extremely precious materials. It was usually used in the central regions, and some of the stronger factions in the middle regions also had it. It was stronger than the medium relic. The fourth type was the king-grade relic, which was made with top-grade materials in the card world. It was much stronger than the previous 3 types, and it had a king's power. The most powerful factions in the card world would have a king-grade cavalry corps. The fifth type was the emperor-grade relic, which was made with rare top-grade materials in the card world. It was stronger than the previous 4 types, and it had a king's power. There were very few factions in the card world that had emperor-grade cavalry corps, and it was rare to see them. The last type was the emperor-grade relic, which was made with the most precious materials in the card world. It was many times stronger than the previous 5 types, and it was the most precious relic in the card world. It had powerful emperor's power. In the card world, the emperor-grade cavalry corps were legendary cavalry, and almost no one had seen them before. However, they had left behind many terrifying legends in the card world. It was said that a group of emperor-grade cavalry corps could kill a celestial. Their power was terrifying to the extreme, and they could destroy the heavens and earth. It seemed that there were no factions in the card world that had them. Every grade of spirit artifact had a different forging method. Low-grade forging methods could only forge low-grade spirit artifacts, while intermediate-grade forging methods could only forge intermediate-grade spirit artifacts. As for overlord-grade spirit artifacts, it required the best forging techniques in the card world. Chapter 2454. This was because the cavalry regiment had powerful equipment, which was a huge advantage. The reason why the cavalry was so powerful was also related to the cavalry itself. As mentioned before, the cavalry of the card world was not the same as the cavalry of other world. The card world could be called the world of knights. As long as one became a knight, one could become a lord. Knights were also a symbol of honor and status. Their status was much higher than that of knights in other worlds. Not only did various countries nurture their own knights, but countless people also trained hard in order to become an outstanding knight. This provided a large number of candidates. Everyone in the cavalry regiment was selected from countless people. Not only were they talented, but they were also very determined. With the support of a country's resources, their cultivation would grow very quickly. This explained why the Thunder Country's basic army was Phase 2, but the cavalry regiment was Phase 4. Other than the cavalry, the next was the knight profession. A talented knight with a set of relics could not be considered a member of the cavalry regiment. They could only be considered a powerful knight. The reason why the cavalry regiment possessed such terrifying strength was largely due to the knight profession. When a country was established in the card world, there would be a place for the knight profession change. Once you entered, you would become a knight. You would have the power of the knight profession and the power of the region's lord. On the other hand, it also showed that the knight regiment was something exclusive to the country. Without becoming a country's power, there was no way to have their own cavalry regiment. Zhao Fu went to the Lock Kingdom's Knight Profession Change Hall, where the cavalry corps was stationed. It was a platform made of white bricks and was about 1 meter tall. There were 3 stone steps around it, and it was 10 or so meters wide. There were 4 3-meter-tall stone tablets around the platform. They were distributed in 4 directions. Each stone tablet had a knight carved on it. It gave off a heavy aura. The profession change here was not for a single person. One also needed to bring a horse to become a member of the cavalry regiment. Zhao Fu called over a soldier and brought a horse to the center of the profession change platform. As the most important thing for the cavalry, the horse would definitely not be ordinary. The horse that the country of Rock chose was a type of water scale horse that lived in the wetlands. It was not very tall and had blue scales. Its tail was slender like a rat's tail. A water scale horse would normally have a type 3 strength when it matured, and its attribute was water. This was because the cavalrymen of a cavalry corps could fuse with their horse's power, and the cavalrymen could also obtain the horse's life force. The more powerful the horses were, the more helpful they would be to the cavalrymen. It was best if the 2 cavalrymen and horses had the same attributes to avoid conflicts when fusing. Moreover, there was no rule that the cavalrymen's mounts had to be horses. Other creatures could also be used as replacements, such as wild boars, goats, black cows, and so on. As long as it could be ridden, it could be used as a mount for a cavalry regiment. Therefore, there were all kinds of cavalry regiments in the card world, such as the Eagle Cavalry Regiment, the Tiger Cavalry Regiment, and even the Dragon Cavalry Regiment. It was best if the mount's strength did not surpass the rider's. If the mount was too powerful, the rider would not be able to suppress it, and accidents would easily occur. By the way, Hillary was also a member of the cavalry regiment. The 12 female cavalrymen who followed her were also members of the cavalry regiment. There was also a small cavalry regiment of a few hundred people. Cavalry armies naturally had ranks, and there was a limit to the number of people, but there was no limit to the number of armies. When a kingdom was established, it had the right to establish a cavalry regiment. They could establish all kinds of cavalry regiments, but they could only have 100,000 people. This was because the strength of a cavalry regiment came from the kingdom, and it consumed the kingdom's power. If there were too many people, the kingdom would be greatly affected, and it might even fall into a weakened state. The higher the kingdom's rank, the higher the cavalry regiment's rank would be, and the more people they would have. Zhao Fu continued to look at the soldier on the platform. He led the water scale horse to the center of the platform, and the 4 stone steels started to give off different kinds of lights as a massive aura spread out. Boom, 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 boom. 4 explosions sounded out as the 4 stone steels shot out 4 rays of light towards the soldier at the center, forming a square orb of light that covered the soldier and the water-scale horse. After a while, the square orb of light continuously shrank before disappearing, and the soldier and the water-scale horse appeared with a blue mark on their foreheads. The mark was like a river that gave off a blue light before disappearing. Now, not only had the soldier become a cavalryman, but the water-scale horse had also obtained a large amount of power. With this power, the water-scale horse's growth speed would become faster, and its strength would also become stronger. It also had some special abilities. Zhao Fu was now a person from the Heaven-Awakened world, so he could not become a cavalryman. As such, he could only find out about this through other people. Zhao Fu asked the soldiers who had just changed professions to lead the horses in front of him and looked at their stats. The first feeling he had was that the soldier and the horse's aura were connected. The horse had the soldier's aura, and the soldier had the horse's aura. It was as if they were in a symbiotic relationship. If the cavalryman's horse died, it would greatly affect the cavalryman. Even though it was impossible for the cavalryman to die, his strength would definitely decrease. The second feeling was that both of them had obtained a portion of Regent's power, which was called Lord's power. Normally, only a lord could wield this power, but now both of them had obtained it. Lord's power was a high-grade power, and after obtaining this power, both the cavalryman and the horse had great potential. If they grew up, they would not be any weaker than a true lord's power. Next were the abilities they possessed. The first ability was the most basic ability of a cavalryman. Every cavalryman could form a cavalryman corps, and their strength and life force would become one. They were like war machines made from all sorts of parts, and they could unleash powerful destructive power. They also had powerful defensive abilities, and when they suffered heavy damage, the damage would be distributed among all of the cavalrymen. The second ability was that cavalrymen had the ability to gather a regent's power. When they were in their own country's territory, the regent's power that they gathered would be the most powerful. The regent's power would flow into the cavalrymen's bodies, greatly increasing their strength. The third ability was called deterrence. When the cavalrymen charged, their aura would increase by many times, causing the enemy to feel fear and panic. The fourth ability was Luo River, which was an attack skill for cavalrymen. Countless cavalrymen's power would gather together, forming a ferocious river that attacked the enemy. The fifth ability was River Snake, which was an attack skill for cavalrymen. Countless cavalrymen's power would gather into a massive water snake, which could cause terrifying destruction. Chapter 2455. The sixth type was the river spirit. When the cavalry of Rock Country was near a river or a body of water, their strength would be enhanced because the power of water would be integrated into their bodies. Next were some offensive and defensive moves. These moves could be inherited by the country, and they were very powerful. For example, the attack of Luo River was the most famous move of Rock Country, and it was also the strongest move of the cavalry of Rock Country. Various kinds of moves could also be created by the cavalry. It depended on what kind of move the cavalry could create. It could be very strong or it could be very weak. The leader of the cavalry was the soul of the cavalry. He must have outstanding talent and the ability to gather other people. What kind of cavalry could exert terrible power? If the leader of the cavalry was a weak person who was afraid of death, the combat power of the cavalry would be very weak and could be easily defeated. This was the information about the cavalry. Zhao Fu felt that it was not difficult to solve. He just needed to master the corresponding rules of the card world. Now, the rules of the chaos world and the alchemy world had been studied by Zhao Fu. The benefits of the alchemy world's rules were great. It allowed Qin to have the Philosopher's Stone, the Mechanical Wyvern, and the Mechanical Blood Mosquito. They played a big role for Qin. In the card world, besides the powerful cavalry, Another big advantage was the ability to create cards. There were all kinds of strange cards that were difficult to deal with. If Qin also had this ability, it would be of great help to Qin in the future. Although Zhao Fu controlled Rock Country and had the conditions to create cards, the key was that ordinary Qin soldiers could not use these cards. This was very difficult to solve because the card ability was born with the talent of the card race. Zhao Fu could crack the card race's card ability by deciphering the alchemy power of the alchemy race. But the reason why everything in the card world could be card was because of the power of the card world. The power and rules of the card world permeated every item. By displaying this card ability, one could turn an item into a card. The power and rules of other worlds were different from the card world. Even if Zhao Fu cracked the card ability, Qin couldn't use it in other worlds. He could only use it in the card world. Zhao Fu pondered whether he should let Qin's soldiers enter the card world at this time. They could build a base in the card world first, and then start to attack the card world. They could also study the various things in the card world. But if Qin enters the card world now, he won't get any benefit. As soon as he enters the card world, everyone will be on guard and attack Qin together. It would be best if he could suddenly enter the card world and take the opportunity to attack some country, catching them off guard and making them defenseless. As such, there was no need to rush into the card world and gather information here first. Zhao Fu smiled. He returned to the palace of Rock Nation and ordered people to gather information from all sides. This was the central region of the card world, and there were far more kingdoms than the outer region, so he had to be careful. If several kingdoms attacked together, even Qin would not be able to resist. The basic forces here were all Phase 2 forces, and most of Qin's forces were Phase 1. In addition to collecting information about this place, Zhao Fu also ordered people to collect various information about the card world, such as some legends, information about the card ability, information about the creation of relics, information about the creation of cards, information about the card creatures. These could help Zhao Fu understand the card world better, and it would be of great help to Zhao Fu. Next, Zhao Fu would need them to crack the card ability and create relic. With this information, Zhao Fu would be able to take fewer detours and reach his goal faster. Zhao Fu sat on the throne and looked at the information. Hilary sat in Zhao Fu's arms, and the 12 female cavalrymen guarded on both sides. The creation of the card world was a little interesting. Originally, the card world was a small world, floating in the endless void. At that time, the card world was hit by other worlds, and the impact was terrifying. The card world spent a lot of energy to withstand it, but it was also heavily injured. The creatures in the card world were almost extinct. Countless beasts, birds, aquatic creatures, and intelligent races died. The grassland became desert, the mountains collapsed, the rivers dried up, and the trees withered. At this time, the card world could be destroyed at any time, and it would take a long time for it to recover. Suddenly, one day, a book flew into the card world and floated in the sky, emitting countless rays of light like the sun, and there was a terrifying wave of energy. It was a golden book, and there were card slots on the pages, but there was nothing in the card slots. The card world was excited and afraid, looking at the golden book that emitted countless rays of light in the sky. It was afraid that the power emitted by the metal could destroy it, and it was excited that if it absorbed the power of the golden book, it could recover quickly. The golden book floated in the air and did not move at all. After observing it for a while, the card world found that the golden book seemed to have been heavily injured and did not have any spirituality. Following this, the card world made a decision to slowly devour and refine the golden book's power. Using the golden book's power, the heavily injured card world quickly recovered. Grass started to grow in a desert, turning it into a green area. Trees quickly grew, turning it into a forest, and flowers bloomed everywhere. All sorts of creatures appeared. Birds flying in the sky, beasts walking on the ground, small insects, and many fish in the water. There were also some intelligent races, but they were not the card race. The card race's birth was different from these races. The card world had been heavily injured and many creatures had gone extinct, but a small portion of intelligent races had survived. This small group of sapient races received the Golden Book's power and gradually gained a special ability, which was the card race. This sapient race became the card race. At the same time, this explained why everything in the card world could be turned into cards, but the card race could not. After all, they were different from other things when they were created. The other races were created by the card spirit world grasping a powerful law, but the card race was not created using this law. Moreover, the card race had grasped this law, which was why they had obtained the ability to turn into cards. Following this, the card world completely absorbed the metal's power and refined the Golden Book, making it a part of the world, which was now the sun. This explained why the card world's sun looked like this and why it was called the Card God Sunday. Chapter 2456. The card world absorbed the Golden Book's power and grasped a powerful power law, which was the card law. The world became a card world. Following this, the card world was like the alchemy world and continuously grew stronger in the boundless void, becoming the current card world. This was the information about the creation of the card world, and the person who recorded this information was the original card race. Now, the whereabouts of those card race people were unknown. Some had died and some had left the card world. Zhao Fu was quite interested in this information, and he felt quite happy after learning about the creation of a world. Zhao Fu knew about the alchemy world and the card world's creation, but Zhao Fu did not know about the outer world and Heaven Awakened world's creation, nor did he have any information about them. Perhaps he did not have a deep understanding of the outer world and did not know much about the mysteries of creation. However, Zhao Fu had gone to the various regions in the Heaven Awakened world but had not found anything. Zhao Fu became more and more curious about how the Heaven Awakened world had been created. However, only the origin race knew about this, and they did not leave behind any information. Zhao Fu continued to look through the information in the card world. Suddenly, Zhao Fu saw a piece of information about Cavalry Corps. It was information about the King Corps, Emperor Corps, and Emperor Corps. The grade of Cavalry Corps that one wanted to become only required the corresponding requirement. If an ordinary person worked hard, even though the chances were quite slim, it was still possible for them to become Emperor-grade cavalry. This meant that even ordinary people could become top-tier Emperor-grade cavalry, but the process was incredibly difficult. This was information about how easy it was to become a king or emperor-grade cavalry. The information was that people with king bloodlines, emperor bloodlines, and emperor bloodlines were more likely to become cavalry of the three great grades. However, those with these bloodlines all had incredibly prestigious statuses and were looked up to and feared by countless people. How could they become cavalry? Moreover, Cavalry Corps needed many cavalry soldiers to unleash their power. 10 or so cavalry soldiers could not be called a cavalry corps. In order to form a cavalry corps of this grade, one had to have a large number of people with king bloodlines, emperor bloodlines, and emperor bloodlines. Naturally, not many people could do this, so the requirements could be lowered. They did not have to have a pure king bloodline. Just a small portion of the bloodline or a bit of king's power was enough. They could easily become cavalrymen of the three major ranks. After becoming the three great cavalrymen, they were slightly more powerful than ordinary cavalrymen. This was because they had king's power and could fuse with the king's power from the great cavalrymen, making them more powerful than ordinary cavalrymen. If all of these were not possible, it was said that the Knight Association possessed a type of knight inheritance that could condense one's strength, inheritance, and bloodline into a knight seal. After a king obtained a knight seal, he could give it to loyal knight. Those knights could rely on the knight seal to grow, and it would be easier for them to become king's cavalry. Moreover, there were all sorts of benefits to having a Knight Seal. Not only could one obtain the Knight Seal's power, legacy, and bloodline, but they could also activate the Knight Seal in times of danger, giving them a massive boost in power. The Knight Seal could also improve a knight's physique and aptitude, increasing their potential. An ordinary knight would dream of obtaining a King's Knight Seal. This was because this Knight Seal was very useful. Zhao Fu felt that this was similar to a king's mark. Back then, after Zhao Fu had condensed a king's mark, he had given Gunia, Wang Ergu, and Lu Mei a king's mark. They had also obtained Zhao Fu's king's power, and the king's mark could change their physiques and increase their strength. By now, Zhao Fu's king's mark had become an origin grade mark. However, there was a limit to the number of king's seals, so Zhao Fu could only give them to his subordinates. There was no limit to the Knight Seal, and one could give as many as they wanted. However, this would consume one's own strength, inheritance, and bloodline, and ordinary kings would not be able to give too many. Moreover, the method to condense a Knight's Seal was something that only the Knight Association had. Moreover, it was something that was monopolized by the Knight Association, and even if others obtained it, they could not pass it on to others. If one wanted to obtain it, they would have to go to the Knight Association. It was possible that one would not be able to obtain this method from the Knight Association, even if one was a king. One would have to pay a price, complete a quest, or use an extremely valuable item to exchange for it. The Knight Association was one of the largest factions in the card world and had heaven-defying power. Let alone kingdoms, even empires would not dare to offend them. They were scattered throughout the card world, and as long as it was a card race city, there would be people from the Knight Association. In the card world, only the Knight Association was so widespread, and apart from them, no other faction could do this. This proved the Knight Association's strength. The key thing was that in order to become a knight and obtain the knight title, one had to be recognized by the Knight Association. This involved a lot of benefits, as knights were an occupation that countless people pursued and loved in the card world. However, the Knight Association had it in their hand. As for races other than the card race, such as the giant race, elf race, or naga race, the Knight Association might not have them. In the card world, there were many outlander races, such as the demon race and the god race. However, even though these three races were also outlander races, demon races, and god races, they were different from the three races. The three races in the card world had been changed by the card world's laws, and they could be turned into cards. The power that they had was the card world's card power. In the card world, the card race was the main race, and the three other races had been suppressed and bullied by the card race. As such, the three races did not have a good relationship with the card race, and they were enemies. Among the three major clans, some clans had mastered the ability to turn cards, especially some of the more intelligent clans. They also had the ability to turn cards. Their card ability was not innate like the card race, but acquired through learning. Because they were enemies, the Knight Association would be ostracized and attacked by the three races, so there would not be a Knight Association there. As a country of the card race, Locke had 10% of the world's face. There were people from the Knight Association in every city, and there was also a Knight Association headquarters in the royal capital that managed all of Locke's Knight Association headquarters. This Knight Association headquarters was in charge of this area, but it was not the true Knight Association headquarters. The Knight Association headquarters was at the center of the card world. When Zhao Fu saw this information, he wondered whether or not he should obtain this Knight Seal. This Knight Seal would be of great help to him, and perhaps he would be able to create a cavalry that surpassed the Emperor cavalry. Chapter 2457. It was possible to create cavalrymen that surpassed Emperor level. Zhao Fu's current bloodline was an initial origin bloodline, which was much more powerful than ordinary origin bloodlines. Moreover, Zhao Fu had obtained all sorts of inheritances and a few ultimate powers. If he used these to condense a Knight's Seal, the Knight's Seal would be incredibly terrifying and could easily destroy a country. Zhao Fu made his decision and smiled as he said, "Call the president of the Lock Kingdom's Knights Guild over. I have something to talk to him about." Hilary asked curiously, "Why are you suddenly looking for the Knights Guild?" "I have a good relationship with her." Zhao Fu lightly smiled as he said, "I want to obtain the method to condense a Knight's Seal." Hilary slightly frowned as she said, "Knight's Seal? That's very difficult to obtain. Even though we have such a good relationship, I didn't ask for it. Moreover, it requires a very high-grade bloodline and power." Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "Then do you know my bloodline and power?" Hilary shook her head as she said, "You're very powerful, and your bloodline should be a royal bloodline because you have a kingdom." Zhao Fu could not help but smile as he said, "Am I that low-grade in your heart?" Hilary hurriedly replied, "How could I? I'm just guessing based on what you said. Also, is your bloodline and power even more terrifying than I thought?" Zhao Fu smiled as he nodded, "I'll give you supreme power." Hilary and the female cavalryman looked incredibly shocked. They knew what supreme power meant. It was an extremely powerful power, and there was nothing more powerful than it. Zhao Fu evidently would not lie to them. Just how terrifying was Zhao Fu's bloodline and power? Only a top-grade Knight's Seal would have such power. Hilary suddenly smiled as she asked, "Then what bloodline do you have, and why do you have such terrifying power?" Zhao Fu looked at the gorgeous Hilary and smiled as he said, "My bloodline is an origin bloodline, and the power I have is Supreme's power." Immediately, Hilary and the female cavalryman looked at Zhao Fu in shock. They had never thought that Zhao Fu's bloodline and power would be so terrifying. They stood there in a daze, their minds blank, unable to react even after a while. Zhao Fu chuckled and said, "All right, call the leader of the Knights Guild over." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, the women reacted and looked at Zhao Fu in shock. Hilary looked at Zhao Fu. "Who are you?" Zhao Fu put his arms around Hilary's body and said with a smile, "As I said before, you will know when Qin enters the card world." Hilary smiled happily and nodded, then turned to Melissa and said, "Immediately tell the Knights Association's president that I have something to discuss with her." Melissa also smiled happily in response, and looked at Zhao Fu. Now that they knew that Zhao Fu was even more powerful and noble than they had expected, they were all pleasantly surprised and happy, and they even felt honored. After all, Zhao Fu's identity was far different from theirs. Following this, under Melissa's lead, a tall and slender woman with long silver hair and a long sword at her waist walked into the palace. She was dressed in armor and had a long sword at her waist. She was most likely the Knights Association's president, Eileen. Eileen looked quite surprised as she looked at the cloaked Zhao Fu sitting on the throne and hugging her good friend Hilary. Eileen had heard about what had happened over the past few days. At first, she did not believe it because she understood Hilary very well and did not think that she would casually become that man's woman. However, now that she had personally seen Hilary happily in that man's embrace, she believed that those words were true. Eileen knew that this man's power was incredibly terrifying and could change the outcome of a battle. She had already reported this to the higher-ups, listing this person as an extremely dangerous person. Moreover, his identity was quite mysterious, and no one knew where he came from. It would be best if he was not from the Heaven-Awakened world. If he was from the Heaven-Awakened world, the situation here would be dire. Seeing Eileen arrive, Hilary looked quite happy as she said, "Lil Na, you've come." Eileen smiled as she replied, It's been a few days since we last met. Congratulations on becoming the Queen of Lock." Hilary smiled as she said, "I didn't obtain this myself. It's all thanks to my man that I can become the Queen of Lock." Eileen looked at Zhao Fu and asked curiously, "Who are you, sir? With such power, you must not be simple, right?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, I'm just an ordinary person. Right now, Zhao Fu definitely would not reveal his identity. After all, she was from the Knights Association, and if she did, everyone in the Knights Association would know. Eileen naturally did not believe Zhao Fu's words, but she did not continue to ask. Locke was his world, and offending him would only result in death. She asked, Why have you called me here? Hilary smiled as she said, Lil Na, my husband wants to obtain the method to condense a night seal. Please tell him how to obtain it. Eileen felt quite troubled as she said, Lil Na, it's not that I don't want to help you, but the association has strict restrictions, and we can't easily teach the method to condense a night seal to others. Hilary continued to say, I know. Tell me how to obtain it, and no matter how difficult it is, my husband will complete it. Eileen became serious as she thought about it and said, The first step to obtaining a night seal is to complete a mission from the Knights Association. This kind of mission is incredibly difficult, and it might even be life-threatening. If you don't want to complete the mission, you can donate a rare treasure. However, this treasure must be extremely valuable and must be above the Emperor Heaven Realm. Hilary frowned. She definitely did not want Zhao Fu to complete a dangerous mission. However, if he did not complete the mission, he would have to donate an Emperor Heaven Realm or above material, and Locke did not have such a precious item. She then looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu gave a trace of a relaxed smile and waved his hand, causing a ray of light to shoot out. A spirit grass that was as long as a palm and had 6 leaves, giving off a faint celestial light, floated in front of Eileen. This is the 6th divine grass that Spirit Realm experts need. It can help Spirit Realm experts gain enlightenment. How do you meet the requirements? If it was before, Zhao Fu would not have been able to take out such a precious item. However, after going to the boundless void and obtaining countless precious things, he now had the confidence to say this. Eileen looked quite shocked. She had never thought that Zhao Fu would be able to casually take out something that Spirit Realm experts needed. It seemed that he was even more terrifying than she had thought. Even if he was not from the Heaven Awakened world, he most likely came from the center of the card world, or else he would not be able to take out such a precious item. Eileen's attitude became more respectful as she said, This item meets the requirements, but you only have one chance to obtain a night seal. There is a second requirement for obtaining a night seal. Chapter 2458. The first requirement is to pass the Knight Association's test. If you can't pass the test, you will not be able to obtain the method to condense a night seal. Zhao Fu asked, What is the test? Eileen explained, There are 2 steps to the test. The first is to accept the Guild Elder's test, and the second is to pass the Guild Stone Steel's test. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, Bring me there. I want to take the test now. Hearing this, Eileen nodded. Following this, Eileen brought Zhao Fu to the Knight Association. The Knight Association was quite big and luxurious, and there were many people coming and going. All of them wore armor and gave off powerful auras. Most of the people here were knights, so they were definitely not weak. Their main goal here was to complete the Knight Association's quests and to obtain information and give out quests. Zhao Fu followed Eileen into the Knight Association, and everyone respectfully called out, President. As for Zhao Fu, they did not pay much attention to him. They did not know that Zhao Fu was the terrifying figure who controlled the entire Locke Kingdom. Eileen lightly nodded before bringing Zhao Fu to a room and saying, Wait here, I need to make some preparations. Zhao Fu nodded and waited in the room. After a while, Eileen brought Zhao Fu to a building. This building was 10 or so meters tall and 10,000 meters wide. The ground was made of wood and there were powerful restrictions all around. After entering here, Zhao Fu's cultivation was suppressed to stage 3. Even though these restrictions were powerful, they were not as terrifying as Zhao Fu's power. After all, Zhao Fu could break the restrictions at any time and recover his original strength, so he did not have to worry too much. There were now 11 people riding horses waiting here. One was extremely beautiful and had snow-white skin. She gave off a holy aura and wore white armor. She rode a white horse and gave off a holy light. Another had long black hair and gave off a dark aura. She wore black armor and rode a black horse, and her body gave off a powerful dark aura. One of them had long gray-white hair and a pale face. He wore gray armor and gave off a gloomy aura. He rode on a gray horse and gave off an aura of death. One of them had a beautiful face and a slim figure. She had a trace of a smile on her face and wore green armor. She rode a green horse and gave off an aura of life. One of them had short violet hair and a seductive figure, giving off a trace of ferocity. He had wheat-colored skin and wore violet armor. He rode on a violet horse and his body gave off arcs of lightning, making him seem quite powerful. One of them was dressed in azure armor. She had azure hair, azure eyes, and a beautiful face. She rode on an azure horse and was surrounded by a cool breeze. The other had a mature figure and a cold face. She wore ice armor and rode an ice horse, and her body gave off a cold aura. One of them had long blue hair braided into a braid. She had an alluring figure and gave off a gentle aura. She rode on a blue horse and gave off a blue vapor. One was a beautiful woman with a calm aura and a graceful figure. She wore yellow armor and rode a yellow horse that gave off a faint yellow light. One had long, wavy, fiery hair and a fiery figure. She rode on a fiery horse in fiery armor and gave off a fiery aura. One had a stiff expression and a slim figure. He wore golden armor and rode a metallic horse, and he gave off a powerful metallic aura. Eileen said, "The 10 of them are a radiant knight, dark knight, death knight, life knight, lightning knight, light wind knight, ice knight, water spirit knight, earth knight, flame knight, and metal knight. They are the elders of the 11 factions in the Knight Association. The Knight Association's stone steel is controlled by the 10 of them. If one cannot obtain their approval, one will not be able to obtain the method to condense a knight seal. 11 factions of knights." Zhao Fu looked at the 11 people in front of him seriously and thought to himself, the Knight Association is quite powerful. They have knights of all factions, and if they formed a cavalry corps, the scene would be quite terrifying. Think about the berserk violet lightning, the rushing rivers, the raging flames, the gray aura of death, the light that shines in all directions, the darkness that devours everything, the firm and massive mountain peaks. At that moment, Zhao Fu started to wonder if the Knight Association was the most powerful faction in the card world. Not only did it control a large amount of wealth and resources, but it was also split into various factions and had all sorts of knights, and none of them were weak. Eileen continued, "Our strength has been suppressed to stage 3. Let out your mount and participate in the test." Zhao Fu looked quite surprised and asked, "Do I have to be a knight to participate in the test?" Eileen looked quite surprised and looked at Zhao Fu strangely as she said, "You're not a knight?" Zhao Fu nodded. Eileen felt a headache coming on as she said, Only specially trained knights can participate in the test. Other professions cannot. I've already given your things to the Knight Association, so I can't return them to you." Zhao Fu frowned as he asked, "Then how can I become a knight that meets your requirements?" Eileen took out a thick book and handed it to Zhao Fu as she said, "This is the Knight Book, and it records all sorts of information and rules related to knights." Zhao Fu looked at the thick book and evidently did not want to read it, so he said, "Can't you make an exception and let me enter the second test?" Eileen did not say anything. The Knight of Light smiled as he said, "This is a rule set by the Knight Association, and it cannot be broken. Since you're not a knight, you're disqualified. Please go back." The Dark Knight said somewhat regretfully, "I wanted to see how powerful you were and see if I could defeat you at the same stage. It seems that I won't have the chance." They already knew who Zhao Fu was, and they were filled with curiosity towards Zhao Fu. They looked at Zhao Fu and sized him up. This was especially so for the Radiant Knights, Dark Knights, Life Knights, Death Knights, Flame Knights, Water Spirit Knights, and Metal Knight. They felt that Zhao Fu had a formless attraction towards them. They understood why. They had different attributes and had always cultivated a single attribute, so they were extremely sensitive to that attribute. They felt that this attribute within Zhao Fu's body was incredibly powerful, which was why he was so attractive to them. However, Zhao Fu had too many attributes, and he had 7 high-grade powers. As such, they were quite curious about Zhao Fu's identity. The fiery Flame Knight smiled as she said, "There's a power within your body that's attracting me. Can you tell me who you are? I quite like the aura you give off." She did not know that she was playing with fire. Zhao Fu smiled as he replied, "If you want to compete with me, you'll definitely lose. As for my identity, I won't tell you. Can you really not make an exception?" Chapter 2459. The Darkness Cavalryman said unhappily, "I know you're powerful, but I'm not weak either. Moreover, we have the same strength and there are 11 of us. I don't believe that you can easily defeat us." The Flame Cavalryman lightly harumphed, "If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. I don't want to know right now." In the end, Eileen said apologetically, "I'm sorry. These are the headquarters rules, and we can't break them." Zhao Fu gave a trace of a wicked smile as he said, "Are you sure? Otherwise, don't blame me." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, the women's expressions fell, and they felt quite afraid. Eileen said seriously, "You're very powerful, but please remember that this is the Knights Association. You should know how powerful the Knights Association is. I hope you won't make any mistakes." Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "The Knights Association is very powerful and has a wide network, but I'm not afraid of the Knights Association in the card world at all." Eileen felt quite startled. "You're from the Heaven Awakened world?" Eileen could tell from Zhao Fu's words that Zhao Fu came from another world, or else he would not have said that they were from the card world. The other cavalrymen's expressions fell. The card world was currently at war with the Heaven Awakened world, and they were enemies. This person's strength was incredibly terrifying, and they were in danger. Suddenly, the Death Cavalryman said coldly, "His strength has been suppressed to stage 3, and ordinary Emperor Heaven Realm experts will not be able to break through it. Hurry and kill him." Hearing this, the cavalrymen gave off massive power and held their spears as they stabbed towards Zhao Fu. Eileen felt that something was wrong, and she wanted to stop them, but it was too late. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as Zhao Fu's body burned with a rainbow-colored aura flame. A massive wave of power exploded out from Zhao Fu's body, sending the 11 cavalrymen flying back like a flood. Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he looked at them, and his golden pupils continuously spun as a formless energy spread out. Clang, 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 rainbow-colored chains shot towards them from all directions, binding them up and bringing them in front of Zhao Fu. Eileen was not one of them. Eileen understood that Zhao Fu was not stupid. He definitely had made preparations before saying those words, so she could not recklessly attack. Now that things had turned out like this, she did not know what to do. Blood leaked out of the cavalrymen's lips, and their faces became pale. They had never thought that Zhao Fu would be able to break through such a powerful restriction like this. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I don't want to participate in any tests right now. Hand over the method to condense the Night Seal, and I'll spare you." Eileen said, feeling quite troubled, "The Night Seal is a legacy technique of the Night Guild, and it can only be obtained through the Night Guild's stone steel. Moreover, you're from the Heaven Awakened world and not a knight, so it's impossible for you to obtain a Night Seal." Eileen felt quite confused and did not understand what Zhao Fu was thinking. She said, "Like I said, you need 11 elders to open it. Even though I'm the president of the Heaven Awakened world, I can't open it. Eileen felt quite confused and did not understand what Zhao Fu was thinking. She said, I said before that you need 11 elders to open it. Even though I'm the president of the Heaven Awaken world, I can't open it. Zhao Fu looked at the 11 cavalrymen on the ground and said, Hurry up and open that place then. The radiant knight's expression was cold as she said, Do you think we'll listen to you so easily? We're cavalrymen, and we have cavalrymen's honor and belief. We won't easily betray them. If you want to kill us, just kill us. The Dark Knight looked at Zhao Fu with her beautiful eyes and said coldly, We're weaker than you, so we'll accept it if we die at your hands. Eileen hurriedly said, Don't be like this, we can still discuss this. Eileen did not want Zhao Fu to kill anyone. If that happened, not only would the 11 elders die, but she and everyone else in the Knights Guild would also die. Zhao Fu turned to look at Eileen and gave a trace of a smile. He stretched out a hand and pinched Eileen's chin as he said, No need, I've already made up my mind. Eileen's face became slightly red and she tried to struggle free. The person in front of her was her good friend's man, and she was not a careless person. However, no matter how much she struggled, she could not. A wave of energy flowed out of her body, sealing her power. Now, she did not have even a trace of strength left in her body. Zhao Fu pulled her into his embrace and started to play with her body. Eileen's face became red and she tried to struggle, but she became weaker and weaker. The knights on the ground looked furious and understood what Zhao Fu wanted to do. They loudly cursed at Zhao Fu, saying, Bastard, scum, beast! At the same time, they started to feel afraid that Zhao Fu would do the same to them. After being defiled by Zhao Fu, they felt that it was worse than death. The Knight of Light wanted to commit suicide, but there was a restriction binding her, making it so that she did not have any strength at all. Zhao Fu did not pay them any mind and started to act indescribably with Eileen in front of them. The knights' faces became red as they looked at Eileen, the president they were so familiar with, become so lewd and shameless. Their expressions were all different. Some were angry, some were furious, some were embarrassed, and some were filled with anticipation. Soon, Eileen weakly lay on the ground, powerlessly gasping for air. Zhao Fu came before the Knight of Light, and the Knight of Light furiously turned her head away. Zhao Fu was not wearing any clothes, and she did not want to face that disgusting thing. Right now, she just wanted to die. Her holy body could not be violated by anyone. However, Zhao Fu pressed down on the Knight of Light's head and told her to service him. Seeing the Knight of Light being violated, the other knights looked at Zhao Fu hatefully, wanting to cut Zhao Fu into pieces and make him die a tragic death. The Knight of Light resisted and looked at Zhao Fu hatefully. However, a wave of energy continuously flowed into her body, causing her consciousness to become hazy, and she took the initiative to service Zhao Fu. Soon, the two of them started to happily do it. The other knights looked quite confused. They had never thought that the Holy Knight of Light would become so lewd. Soon, the Knight of Light would not be able to continue, and Zhao Fu walked towards the Knight of Darkness. Although the Dark Knight had a cold expression as she waited for Zhao Fu, there was also a trace of anticipation in her heart. She did not know why the man before her had evoked her dark desires. Not long after, the Dark Knight took the initiative to serve Zhao Fu, and then the two of them continued to do indescribable things. Following this, many cavalrymen joined in, making indescribable noises. Just like the cavalrymen from before, these cavalrymen displayed their strengths and madly rode on Zhao Fu's body, but in the end they were also defeated by Zhao Fu. Outside the room, everything was normal. Many knights came and went, not knowing what had happened inside the room. The members of the Knights' Union also did not notice that their president and elder were being violated by a man. During this process, Zhao Fu discovered that the Knights of the 11 factions had 11 unique powers. Apex. Chapter 2460. Zhao Fu gathered these 11 powers together, forming a rainbow-colored knight mark within his body. It looked like a knight wearing armor, holding a spear, and riding a horse. The knight mark also gave off a strange and powerful power. This power seemed to be exclusive to knights, and only knights had it. Zhao Fu felt quite curious about this power, but he did not know what it was, so he could only put it aside for now. In the middle of the night, a crescent moon appeared in the night sky, giving off faint moonlight. The room was in a mess, and there were clothes and armor scattered everywhere. Many female knights lay on the floor, their faces red as they panted. Zhao Fu hugged Eileen and the other knights, and after enjoying so many nights, he felt quite surprised. These knights were all virgins, and Hilary and the others had also been virgins. It seemed that there were many virgins in the card world. "You bastard, you've done this to us. Aren't you afraid that the Knight Guild will come after you?" Eileen lay in Zhao Fu's embrace as she looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "Since I dared to do it, I naturally won't be afraid. Now that you're all my women, you won't betray me." Eileen retorted, "Who said we're your women? As the president of a guild, I'll definitely report this to the higher-up." Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I don't believe you." Eileen had already accepted Zhao Fu and would not report this matter to the higher-ups. She coquettishly looked at Zhao Fu as she said, "I don't know what kind of charm you have to obtain us so easily." The Flame Knight boldly laughed as she said, "This is the first time I've experienced such happiness, and I want to do this with you every day." Zhao Fu smiled as he replied, However, ordinary people can't take it and will die under you." The many knights' faces became red, and the Light Wind Knight lightly pinched Zhao Fu as she said, "You can't make fun of us. It's all your fault." The Knight of Light also blushed and agreed. She was the second person to be violated by Zhao Fu, and was even forced to serve Zhao Fu. Thinking about those scenes, she felt ashamed. Zhao Fu laughed a few times. "Do you still have the strength now? Can you activate the Union Stone Tablet now?" The Dark Knight rolled his eyes at Zhao Fu. "You've tortured us for so long and this is our first time. Do you think we have the strength now?" The Earth Knight replied honestly, "Yes, yes. Was the Knight's Seal that important? Can't you spend more time with us?" The Ice-Cold Ice Knight said softly, "Yes." The Water Spirit Knight nodded obediently, expressing his agreement. Zhao Fu smiled helplessly. "Then let's wait for a while." The Life Knight looked at Zhao Fu curiously and said, "We've talked about this before. You're someone from the Heaven Awakened world and not a knight, so you can't obtain a Knight Seal. Could it be that you have a way to resolve this?" Zhao Fu replied, "I have a forbidden technique that can resolve this problem, but I'm not 100% confident, so I'll give it a try first." The Death Knight shyly asked, "What high-grade power do you have? Moreover, after doing this with you, our strength and constitution have greatly increased. It's even more effective than eating spirit medicines." The other knights sensed their bodies and looked delighted. They looked at Zhao Fu with their beautiful eyes, waiting for Zhao Fu's reply. Zhao Fu smiled as he explained, "That's for sure. I have all sorts of high-grade power within my body, and I even have sovereign power. As such, it'll be very beneficial to you." All of the knights looked quite shocked. Eileen asked, "I knew that your identity wasn't simple. Hurry up and tell us who you are and why you're here." It seemed that Zhao Fu asked these kinds of questions the most. Zhao Fu replied, "Because I'm the ruler of a kingdom, my identity and power are quite complicated. After my faction enters the card world, you'll know everything." Everyone smiled and nodded. They believed that Zhao Fu was not a simple ruler of a kingdom. Moreover, even if Zhao Fu was just the ruler of a kingdom, his status was much more prestigious than theirs. Eileen suddenly said, "Everyone, get up and put on your clothes. We're going to open the place that prevents the Union Stone steal." Hearing this, the women all got up and put on their clothes. Zhao Fu looked quite surprised and asked, "Why aren't you resting for a while?" Eileen said with a trace of a smile, seeing how anxious you were just then. How could we rest properly? Now that we've given our bodies and minds to you, if you dare to let us down in the future, I won't let you off." Zhao Fu smiled and said seriously, "I won't." Following this, everyone put on their clothes and came out of the room. The Union's people had been worried that something had happened inside, but seeing the elders and president come out, they let out a sigh of relief. However, many of the elders' faces were quite red, and they looked much better than before. Zhao Fu and the others came before a 3-meter-tall stone door. The 11 knights stretched out their hands, and waves of energy continuously flowed out of their palms, forming 11 rays of light that shot towards the stone door. The stone door gave off countless rainbow-colored lights and a massive aura before slowly opening. Eileen explained, "The Union stone steel contains many important things, so it has to be highly protected. If you forcefully destroy the stone door, the stone steel will automatically be destroyed." Zhao Fu understood and nodded before entering with the others. Inside was a stone room that was made of brick. It was 10 or so meters wide, and there was a 3-meter-tall stone steel at the center. There were many knights carved on it, and it gave off a massive might. Eileen said, "All you need to do is go over and place your hand on the stone steel. The stone steel will give off a powerful repelling force, and even if you're from the Heaven Awakened world, you won't be able to get close." Zhao Fu looked at the stone steel in front of him and said, "Got it." Following this, Zhao Fu walked forwards, and a massive repelling force swept towards him. This repelling force was not very strong to Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu released a wave of power to easily block it. However, the stone steel gave off boundless light, and images of knights appeared, giving off terrifying power. The air became heavy, and everyone felt a terrifying chill. It seemed that the stone steel had sensed the Heaven Awakened world's aura within Zhao Fu's body, and attacking Zhao Fu would not be a simple test. Everyone looked at Zhao Fu, planning to stop the Union stone steel at any moment. Zhao Fu directly used the 8 Forbidden Blood technique, and changed his bloodline to the Lock Kingdom's royal bloodline. The light from the stone steel immediately disappeared, and the terrifying aura disappeared. The images of knights also disappeared, and everything returned to normal. Everyone looked quite confused, not knowing what method Zhao Fu had used to give off the royal bloodline's royal bloodline. Chapter 2461. Following this, Zhao Fu walked in front of the stone steel and placed his hand on it. He felt an armored figure holding a spear and riding a horse charging at him, and before Zhao Fu could react, he was forced back a few steps. Eileen explained, "This is the Knights Union's Knight's power. You have to become a knight in order to receive this power. Moreover, the knight's power will appear in your mind and turn you into a knight. You have to defeat it in your mind to pass the test." Zhao Fu frowned. He had never thought that things would be like this. He had thought that with his bloodline in the card world, he would be able to resist the repulsive force, and he had never thought that it would be so complicated. How could he solve this problem? Indeed, he was not a knight in the card world. Did he really have to practice to become a knight? It would take him at least a month. Suddenly, Zhao Fu suddenly thought of something. He had just obtained the knight's power, which was the power he had absorbed from the 11 elders and condensed into a knight's mark. How could this knight's power enter his body? Could it be a problem with the method? However, in front of him was a 3-meter-tall stone steel. Zhao Fu could not treat it like a woman. Perhaps he could try using this knight's power. Thinking to there, Zhao Fu once again went up and placed his hand on the stone steel, activating the knight's mark, and a powerful wave of knight's power flowed out. Boom! An explosion sounded out in Zhao Fu's mind as the stone steel gave off a wave of knight's power and successfully entered Zhao Fu's mind. It turned into a cavalryman wearing iron armor and holding an iron spear, riding on a horse and ferociously charging towards him. Zhao Fu had to use knight's power to block here, and Zhao Fu could not continue to use the Knight's mark's power into his mind. The colorful wave of Knight's power flowed into Zhao Fu's mind and split up, turning into 11 Knights giving off different lights and powers. Zhao Fu felt quite surprised. He had never thought that such a thing would happen, and he felt that he had done the right thing in taking over the bodies of 11 Knights. If it wasn't for this power, things would not have been resolved so quickly. Next, 11 Knights fought against 1 Knight, and needless to say, that Knight was surrounded and killed. Boom! At that moment, the Knight's stone steel gave off a massive aura and a massive amount of Knight's power flowed into Zhao Fu's body. Everyone was surprised. They never thought that Zhao Fu would really pass the stone tablets test. It was the first time in their history that they had seen someone who was not from the card world or a knight profession pass the test of the guild's stone steel. The massive power continuously poured into Zhao Fu's body, forming runes. These runes were the things that recorded the condensing of the Knight seal. Suddenly, the Rainbow Knight mark that Zhao Fu had condensed before collapsed and turned into 11 different forces that poured into those runes. The runes continuously condensed and changed, creating a suction force. Zhao Fu's bloodline and other powers flowed into the runes. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as Zhao Fu's body gave off an intense light, and a terrifying power flowed out from Zhao Fu's body. The Knights felt a massive might fall on their bodies. This might did not come from their bodies, but it also came from their minds. It was as if they were facing an untouchable Night King. Their power, bloodline, and faith were forcing them to submit, and their bodies uncontrollably knelt on the ground. The Knights could not understand what was going on. Why did Zhao Fu give off such a terrifying power? This power made it so that they could not control their bodies, and they knelt on the ground, feeling immense fear. Suddenly, when they sensed this terrifying power, they thought of a legend about the King of Night. In the card world, a type of person would be born. They were natural-born kings and had unimaginable talent. They were people blessed by the heavens, and they would lead countless knights to change the world. No one could stop them, and those who resisted would become corpses under their feet. This type of person was called the Night King. The Night King was incredibly rare in the card world, and not just anyone could become one. Even emperors would not be able to become one. They were even more terrifying than emperors, and even emperors would not dare to offend them. Was this man in front of them someone who could be called the Night King? The knights knelt on the ground and looked at the person giving off an incredibly terrifying aura. They were certain that the person in front of them was the Night King. This was because this terrifying power had caused their faith, bloodline, and power to submit. Apart from the Night King, no one else could do such a thing. They felt incredibly shocked. They had never thought that they would have any relationship with someone they could not even come into contact with, and yet, that man had become the Night King in front of them. What was more, he was someone from the Heaven Awakened world, yet he had become the Night King in the card world. This had never happened before. Runes continuously condensed within Zhao Fu's body, and all sorts of power continuously gathered within Zhao Fu's body. The terrifying aura he gave off became more and more terrifying, and the ground cracked. The knights all knelt on the ground, their bodies trembling, not daring to look up at Zhao Fu. In the end, the countless runes formed a mark within Zhao Fu's body. This mark was black and looked like a domineering crown, and it gave off a shocking aura. After the mark was condensed, the terrifying aura from Zhao Fu's body disappeared, and the surroundings returned to normal. A trace of a smile appeared on Zhao Fu's face. Now that he had condensed a night mark, he could directly give it to someone else. The method of condensing a night mark was to help you condense a night mark and not to tell you how to condense a night mark. Condensing a night mark could only be done through the Night Union's stone steel. Without the Night Union's stone steel, it was impossible to condense a night mark. As such, the Night Union had a monopoly on this night mark. No one could give out night marks, and they could only rely on the Night Union to obtain them. This Knight's seal was not an ordinary Knight's seal, but a more advanced King's Knight's seal. The power of this Knight's seal was much greater than that of ordinary Knight's seals. It could grant knights greater power and had other uses. Zhao Fu turned to look at the knights kneeling on the ground and smiled as he said, "You can all rise." Hearing this, the knights all let out a sigh of relief and stood up, looking at Zhao Fu with their beautiful eyes. Now, they felt more and more curious about this man. Chapter 2462. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "Do you all want to become my horsemen? I can give you unimaginable power." The horsemen smiled and nodded, their eyes filled with anticipation and excitement. Even though they did not know what grade Zhao Fu's bloodline was, with the King's Knight Seal's power, he would definitely be incredibly powerful. Following this, the horseman knelt on one knee in front of Zhao Fu and took out a sword and placed it in front of them. They looked serious as they said in unison, "We are willing to serve our Lord and obey all of our Lord's orders. We will never betray him." Zhao Fu smiled and stretched out a hand, and a massive wave of power flowed out and entered their bodies. Boom! 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 The horsemen felt an immense wave of power enter their bodies, as if an ocean's water was about to enter their bodies. Their minds trembled and went blank. Even though they had been somewhat prepared, they had never thought that this wave of power would be so terrifying. Let alone them, even an ordinary person would become a terrifying expert after absorbing this power. As the massive power entered their bodies, their power, bloodline, and constitution all became stronger, and they felt as if they were rushing into the sky. This power was simply too powerful. The power continuously flowed into their bodies, causing their bodies to give off boundless black light, and the auras they gave off were quite terrifying. A mark appeared on their foreheads, looking like a crown. It was also black, and it was the same as the mark within Zhao Fu's body. Zhao Fu retracted his hand and stopped sending power into their bodies. The horsemen came back to their senses and looked delighted. First of all, their constitutions and aptitudes had been greatly improved. Even though their bloodlines weren't king-class bloodlines, they weren't any weaker than king-class bloodlines, and they could give off terrifying power. Moreover, their cultivation had been at the world realm, but they had broken through to the divine realm. They had needed 10 or so years to break through, but they had broken through in just a few minutes, helping them save 10 or so years. This was something that was incredibly difficult to achieve. Finally, the knight's power that they had now was condensed from Zhao Fu's body. It was very advanced, even more powerful than the knight's power that they had seen in the Knights' Union. This was too shocking. As a person from another world and not a knight, the knight's strength that he had condensed was even more powerful than the top-level knight's strength of the Knights' Union. How did he do it? The knight's seal was the power that condensed one's bloodline and power inheritance. Now, this knight's power could be said to be the power to destroy the world. What kind of bloodline and power did he have? Everyone's hearts thumped violently as they stared at the man in front of them. They were so shocked that they couldn't even speak. They had greatly underestimated this person. Seeing their shocked expressions, Zhao Fu chuckled and said, "How powerful? I didn't lie to you, right?" Everyone came back to their senses and nodded affirmatively. Eileen looked at Zhao Fu seriously and said, "I've never seen such powerful knight's power before. I wonder if you're someone whose name shakes the entire heaven-awakened world. Your identity is not something that we can come into contact with." The Radiant Knight also nodded seriously and said, "I think so too. Your identity is definitely incredibly terrifying in the heaven-awakened world, and you're someone that the entire world knows." The other knights nodded. After all, the knight's power that Zhao Fu had condensed was simply too terrifying, and it was even more powerful than the top-level knight's strength of the Knights' Union. The Knights' Union was one of the most powerful factions in the card world. The top-level power that the Knights' Union controlled was definitely one of the most powerful in the world. However, The Knight's power that Zhao Fu had condensed was even more powerful than the Knights Union's top-level power. This meant that the man in front of them was incredibly terrifying. Zhao Fu lightly laughed and said, "You're right, I'll tell you about these things in the future. I'm giving you this power not just because you're my women but also because I want to nurture you into peerless experts." The knights all grinned. Zhao Fu's words were not wrong. Having this power not only gave them all sorts of benefits, but they could also become peerless experts in the future. This was a massive opportunity for them. Eileen smiled as she said, we know that you treat us well, and we'll remember this and won't disappoint you." The Darkness Knight smiled confidently as she said, "With this terrifying power, even a piece of trash can become a powerful expert. With this power, we'll definitely become peerless experts in the world." The Flame Knight looked at Zhao Fu flirtatiously and said, "Now that our bodies have recovered, we'll properly serve you. You can do whatever you want to us." The Holy Radiant Knight's face became slightly red as she thought back to the scene of her serving him. Even though it was quite shameful, she now liked that feeling. Zhao Fu smiled as he refused, saying, "No, I'm busy right now." The knights all looked quite disappointed. Zhao Fu continued, "You can go to the palace in the future. Right now, I need the Knights Association to obtain some information, and I'll nurture you to develop your own factions. I hope that you can use the Knights Association to develop." Eileen smiled as she said, "All right, the Knights Association is yours, and we'll help you gather all of the information you want. However, it'll be quite difficult for us to develop our own factions because the Knights Association's management is quite strict. We might be summoned back to the Knights Association at any time, and we might even be stripped of our current positions." Zhao Fu looked quite surprised. "It's that strict?" Eileen nodded as she said, Did you think that I lied to you before? If we easily go against the Knights Association's rules, we'll be severely punished, so we won't help you." Zhao Fu thought about it and said, "All right then. You can be more secretive and prepare to leave the Knights Association at any time." Eileen smiled as she replied, "All right. Now that you're our man and have given us such great power, we'll definitely treat you as our leader in the future." Following this, Zhao Fu left the Knights Association and returned to the palace. Seeing that Zhao Fu had been gone for so long, Hilary rolled her eyes at Zhao Fu as she asked, "Why did you only come back now?" Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I was delayed by some things. Now that I've obtained a Knight's Seal, it's not an ordinary Knight's Seal. Now that you're all standing in front of me, I'll give my power to you." Hilary did not think too much about it and turned her attention to the Knight's Seal. She understood that the Knight's Seal that Zhao Fu had condensed would be incredibly powerful, and she had been looking forward to it. Chapter 2463. The knights and Hilary stood in front of Zhao Fu and nervously looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu gave a trace of a smile and stretched out his hand, and a massive wave of energy flowed out and entered their bodies. Boom! Boom! A rumbling sound rang out in their minds, and they felt a massive wave of power enter their bodies, causing them to feel shocked. This wave of energy surpassed their imaginations, causing their power, bloodline, and faith to submit. Their bodies uncontrollably knelt on one knee. Following this, marks appeared on their foreheads. They had obtained Zhao Fu's Night Mark, and the aura that they gave off disappeared. They were slightly weaker than the Knight Association's elders, so they received greater benefits. Sensing the changes in their bodies, everyone smiled in delight. Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "Everyone, get up!" Everyone came back to their senses and stood up, smiling as they looked at Zhao Fu. Hilary went up and hugged Zhao Fu as she smiled as she said, "The Night Mark that you condensed is so powerful. It seems that I've underestimated you. As expected from my man." Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "I have something to tell you all." Hilary looked at Zhao Fu curiously and asked, "What is it?" The knights also looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, I want to establish 2 cavalry corps. I'll give one to you all. Hearing this, the cavalrymen all smiled. With how powerful Zhao Fu was, he would definitely be able to create 2 extraordinary cavalry corps. Moreover, the night seal that Zhao Fu had given them was monstrous, and if every cavalryman had such a night seal, nothing would be able to stop them. Hilary happily smiled as she said, All right. I never wanted to be an emperor, I just wanted to be the commander of a cavalry corps. How do you want to establish 2 cavalry corps? Zhao Fu thought for a moment before saying, With the knight mark that I've given you, you will definitely become legendary imperial knights in the future, or even surpass imperial knights. I want to nurture you as the world's top cavalry corps. Hilary and the other knights smiled and nodded. Now that they had obtained the knight seal, they were confident that they could become imperial knights, and they were quite excited. Zhao Fu continued, I'm not able to give you high-tier relics and mounts due to my limited resources. I'll prepare them for you later. You should build your own knight group first. Hilary smiled happily and said, We know. A smile appeared on Zhao Fu's face. Just as he was about to hug Hilary and sit on the throne, Hilary, who was in his arms, asked curiously, Where's the other cavalry division? Didn't you say to build 2 cavalry regiments? Looking at Hilary in his arms, Zhao Fu briefly explained what had happened at the Knight Association. Many of the knights' faces became red. They understood what it was like because they had experienced it before. Hilary said angrily, All right. You scoundrel, you violated my good friend behind my back. You didn't let those elders of the Union off either. Zhao Fu said with a shameless smile, You can't blame me back then. For the sake of the Knight Seal, there was nothing I could do. Moreover, they are just as attractive as you. Hilary said coquettishly, If you don't satisfy us today, we won't forgive you. Zhao Fu lightly laughed. Yes, I know. The other female knights blushed and looked at Zhao Fu expectantly. They naturally liked that. Zhao Fu hugged Hilary and sat back on the throne. Hilary asked curiously, What kind of knight group do they want to be? Are they different from us? Zhao Fu nodded. There are 12 of them in total. 11 of them are from the 11 factions of the Knight Association, and they represent different attributes. Elena is a mystic moon knight, so she has different attributes from the others. I plan to nurture them into an elemental knight group, which is a knight group with different attributes. Hilary frowned. Doesn't that mean that their knight group will be stronger than ours? We don't have that many attributes. Although Hilary and Elena were good friends, she did not want to be weaker than Elena's knight group. Zhao Fu smiled as he said, If you have other attributes, you will indeed not be as strong as their knight group. Hilary looked at Zhao Fu with her beautiful eyes and said, What kind of power is there that can make us stronger? We just need to be as strong as the elemental knight group. Zhao Fu thought for a moment. Actually, it's not that you don't have an advantage. Compared to them, you have a royal bloodline, and I will nurture you into a royal knight group. Your strength will naturally not be weaker than theirs. Hilary happily kissed Zhao Fu. Thank you, husband. Following this, Zhao Fu sat on the throne and hugged Hilary as he looked at the various information that he had collected from the card world. In the end, he had gained something, and it was about this region. There was a card land in this region, which contained a very powerful card power. It was a pity that it could not be used as a cultivation ground. If it could be used as a cultivation ground, it would be able to increase one's cultivation speed. Moreover, that place had a very powerful corrosive power that could corrode many things. Those things that were corroded would become cards, which was why it was called the card land. There were many uses for this card land, such as throwing things into it, and those things would automatically become cards. This was because in the card world, card transformations required power, and the higher the level of the card, the more power it would consume. With this card land, there was no need to worry about this consumption, and it could transform a large number of things into cards. The second was that even though the card land had a powerful corrosive power and could not be used as a cultivation ground, if a card was placed there, it would be nourished by the card land and would become more powerful. The third was to transform things that did not belong to the card world into cards. This was what Zhao Fu valued the most. Its powerful corrosive power could corrode things that did not belong to the card world and change their structure, turning them into things that belonged to the card world, which would then be transformed into card. In other words, it was a place of conversion, able to convert things from other worlds into things from the card world. Zhao Fu felt that this would be useful to him. With this place, he would be able to transform creatures from the Heaven Awaken world into creatures from the card world. Finally, the card transformation land produced a low-level card crystal. This card crystal was a crystal that contained the power of the card and had various uses in the card world. This place definitely had an owner. A kingdom had made that place its territory and forbade others from entering. Anyone who disobeyed would be killed, and if one wanted to obtain that place, one would have to defeat that kingdom. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.